Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. The first move. Royal Realm, Huden. Fancy club, crappy little shack. Ichigo said, comparing the two main sites of Otsu's city. The first was a bright and flashy building that seemed like a massive hostess club than anything else and filled with girls to enforce that idea. Otsu was trying to start a party before Ichigo noted how lonely the guy was, considering all of the girls were Zanpakuto. The next 5 minutes was spent trying to get the master bladesmith to stop crying until a red-haired girl named Mera kicked him in his head and dragged them to said crappy little shack at the edge of a cliff. The real residence of the Blade God. I'm not sure whether to feel sorry or not. The girls seemed fun though. Orihime chimed in, already heading toward the small building. But if he does control this entire area, why doesn't he just move into that place and make this one strictly a forge? She suggested, prompting the two to look at the Zero Squad member. Because I live in my forge. The Blade Master admitted as he finally started to act serious. Helps me feel connected to the Zanpakuto. A true master devotes everything to his craft. He stood next to the opening and pulled the curtain away. Inside, you'll find dash. That was irritating. The smith heard someone growl. He turned to Zangetsu, pull himself out of the building. All this trouble for your actual blade and you did nothing. He scowled at Ichigo, who shrugged. That was the weird thing, I couldn't find you precisely. Ichigo returned as Zangetsu went to stand by his master's side. Otsu kept staring at Zangetsu before looking into his palace. I may have my work cut out for me this time. He thought before revealing the water slide path. Alright Ori, down here. The two looked down into the slide before Orihime dived in, laughing the whole way. Ichigo shook his head before following with Zangetsu close behind, finishing with Otsu. The ride went by quickly, with Ichigo snatching his girlfriend before they landed in the pool. The end. Come on boy. That's the best part of the ride. The smith said, before realizing he was being ignored for his forge. A massive cascading waterfall and a natural stone pillar with a hollow recess in it. Alright, time to get this show on the road. He yelled as 5 girls popped out of nowhere and hit him, 1 strike for each. Nemea's private escort group is in the hizzy. The blonde girl cheered. With her was Mera, 2 black-haired girls with one seeming worried while the other seemed covered in bandages, and a little kid. Orihime was clapping excitedly for the performance. Ichigo and Zangetsu were watching in disbelief. Do you really need a real Zanpakuto? Zangetsu asked, Ichigo honestly considering they just leave. Before a decision could be made, he dematerialized into a white bar of whatever the material Otsu used was called. Mera lit the forge, the blonde girl grabbed the blade. With her hair, the depressed girl and kid filled a quench tank, while the bandage girl pulled out a tooth and made it into a mallet. Otsu himself tied up his hair and took off his sunglasses, took up the mallet and began to hammer away at the bar. With nothing else to do but wait, Ichigo sat and meditated while listening to the clangs of the hammer. Karakura battles, Isshin vs Grimmjow. Seal release. Isshin called out, his Shihakusho in tatters from his fight. Grimmjow was only slightly better, but knew the captain was holding back because of the seals captains and lieutenants have to wear. My son is stronger, but I'm still a captain of the Godii. He reminded before flashing in front of the Aaron and flicking his forehead. The attack struck like a high-impact cannon and sent him flying through the air, colliding with other hollows before riding himself out and ready to charge back at the captain. He sensed Isshin appearing right behind him, ready to cleave through his back and ending the fight before Grimmjow barely blocked with his own sword. Grind, Pantera. The Aaron called out, placing his nails on the flat of his blade before clawing down the length. The sudden burst of Racier forced Isshin back as gusts of wind clouded Grimmjow from view. When the dust settled, it revealed the Aaron with long hair, cat ears, a long white tail, and segmented body armor with blade extending from his calves and elbows. That's fine with me. I'll get even stronger and grind that punk's head into the dirt. The panther roared before clashing with Isshin once again, but, despite the added strength and agility, Isshin was still capable of keeping up and dominating the fight. Getsuga Tensho. He called out, getting behind the panther and striking him with the concentrated wave of Raisher. The force of the attack gouged out and scarred the land, destroying most of the park and severely damaging the containment barrier around the park. When the dust settled, Grimmjow was covered in slow healing burns and started to stagger. "You're holding back," Isshin stated, knowing how much stronger Grimmjow got. "I thought you'd know better than that. I'm saving that for my rematch against that kid of yours," Grimmjow said with a savage, pointing his elbow at Isshin before appearing in front of him. "Guerra de la Pantera," he shouted, shooting Isshin point blank in the stomach with his green explosive stone bullets. The explosion covered them both in smoke and dust before Grimmjow was sent flying back, spinning from the force of a punch. "That better be one hell of an ace," the father said as he rubbed his torso, "'cause you'll need a lot more than that, a hell of a lot more, to challenge Ichigo. Burn, and Jetsu," he said, letting his Raisher become the fire surrounding his sword. "Now show me what you've got," he roared as the two charged at each other once more. Royal Realm, Huden. The repeated clangs of the hammer on the blade were the only sound the hybrid heard as he meditated, waiting for the moment when Zangetsu would truly be completed. A part of him wondered why it was taking so long, expecting a near instantaneous crafting with minimal effort, but Otsu was starting to drip with sweat and his breath becoming labored. Nevertheless, the hammer kept striking and the rings becoming more melodious until the moment came. "Ichigo!" Zangetsu called out to him, making Ichigo's eyes snap open. The bright burning flames were being consumed by the darkness that was emanating from Zangetsu's form, needing one last ingredient to finish the blades. He flashed to his Zanpakuto and plunged his hands into the flames. The protest of the other Zanpakuto falling on deaf ears as Ichigo poured his Raisher into the blades. Otsu merely smiled as Ichigo pulled the blades free and all the spirit water evaporated. His waterfalls, the sea, the very moisture from the air, and the blades were still burning hot in the boy's hands. "DMN, and here I thought I've seen it all," the smith thought as the blades in Ichigo's hands radiated power before settling down into the Kyber and trench blade combo. "Well kid, my work here with you is done. You should head on to the monk city if you wanted to pick up some extra techniques," he suggested as he staggered slightly. "I need to get myself a bite to eat. You wanna come with? I'll explain what we need to do," he asked Orihime, who got up and followed while cradling the broken and whole Muramasa blades. "Is crafting a Zanpakuto really that hard?" Orihime asked, feeling respect for the smith considering how draining it was to craft Zangetsu. "You go through that every time?" "Hell no, that blade was insane," Otsu yelled out as they reached the launch pad. "Every other blade I made was easy, even my sharpest blade, compared to that thing," he explained, just as they got sent skywards toward the Gantenbainne, where Kiryu Hikifune resided. All Asauchi are made from dead souls, or rather the raw material left behind. When a soul goes through the cycle of reincarnation, they are cleansed of everything that made up the individual. Something like that always leaves fragments behind, which I gather and merge together to form my Asauchi. Completely blank until they come into contact with their soul reaper and why they take on their own individual form. "So you're going to take the remains of Muramasas to activate a new Asauchi?" she asked, trying to understand the finer complexities of spirit blade forging. "How does he become a contract spirit through that?" "I said I was going to reforge Muramasa, not make a new one," Otsu explained as he landed and caught Orihime before she turned into passed on the ground. Or tried to catch her since as she came closer to the ground, the air itself tried to keep her aloft with her green ring glowing. "I'm going to take the already forged blades of Muramasa and use them to remake the blade. It won't be Muramasa, but it will have his reincarnation." He started to head for the palace of Hikifune, who was already cooking a large buffet. "Just as well since Zangetsu took everything I had. Kurosaki's sword must really be powerful then," Orihime said in amazement, almost distracted by the scent of Hikifune's cooking. I never saw an Asauchi come out of that pit already claimed. He said, rolling his shoulders to relieve some of the stress. I've also never seen a Zanpakuto absorb all of my Asauchi either. He said, pondering how this all came to be. All that power, compressed into those dual Zanpakuto. Is this because of his being a hollow and Quincy? Maybe after I reforge Muramasa, I should bring out Sayafushi. See which blade is better. Karakura fights, Chad vs Yami. Bala. The large Arrancar shouted, shooting his energy from his fists, as Chad charged at him with both arms as shields and blocking the blasts. You stubborn bstrd. He began charging as Zero before Chad shot in front of him and switched his left arm to its devil form. La muerte. Chad called out, uppercutting his opponent in the chin. The blow slammed his mouth shut, cracked several of the Espada's teeth, made the Zero explode prematurely, and finished with the shockwave of the attack pulsing through Yami's skull. Not letting up, he took the chance to charge his shield arm and hit the Arrancar in the stomach. El Directo. The blow made Yami double over and the following blast sent him flying, followed by the massive blast pounding against the Arrancar. Chad took a chance to catch his breath, having spent the whole fight trying to outrun and beat down the Arrancar, and tiredness was beginning to set in. That moment of respite ended when Yami appeared in front of the Foolbringer and slammed a fist into Chad and sent him flying until he rolled onto his feet. You're tougher than you look, I'll give you that. Yami said through his broken teeth, spitting out a glob of blood and teeth. But you'll break, human. Not if I break you first. Chad grunted as the two charged at each other again. Royal Palace, Huden. Are you sure this will work? Orihime asked, calligraphy brush with ink in hand over a wide sheet of paper. You did say this is a first for you. Don't worry, Haim. Otsu answered, breaking up the blades of the two Muramasa swords into smaller pieces and setting them in two separate piles. The monk supplied the ink and paper, you just have to write what abilities you want it to have. Only two though, and we'll have to rename the finished blade. Orihime shrugged and thought about what to write. What she puts down would be the final say in the sword's future, but not too strong as it would also draw on her power, and she was beginning to tax herself now with the spirits she did have. Eventually, she had her idea. Cut my enemies, heal my friends. She said while writing the two commands on the paper, one phrase on one half. When she finished, the ink dried and disappeared, becoming part of the paper and charging it with power. Otsu finished breaking the blades into pieces and stacked them into a pile. Okay, bring me the papers. Otsu ordered as Orihime grabbed the two and went over to him. The master smith stacked the blade fragments together and wrapped the two in the different papers. He then poured watery clay over the two and covered them in straw he got from Hikifune before having his girl, Hasuka, move the stacks to Mera's fire. The forge having been restored while he and Orihime ate. The fragments will absorb the power you imbued in the papers, then I will consolidate the fragments into a whole before combining them and form the rest of the blade. What do you think the name should be? Well, Orihime starting while letting her mind guide her down what she though would be perfect, he did seem to be a blade to only cause harm. Seemed very reminiscent to famous blacksmith whose swords only craved blood, so I tried to make this one be the opposite. I think Masamune would be best. The legendary human smith whose works were holy, healing blades in the legends. Otsu asked, hearing some details of mortal smiths. Nice choice. The billets were pulled out and he began to hammer away at the two, forming the flesh and heart of the sword, the Kawagani. And Shingain. Orihime sat by and watched, listening to the clangs of the hammer on the steel. Karakura fights, Uryu vs Samari. You've seen that it doesn't work, Uryu said while dodging 5 simultaneous slashes and shooting the black Arrancar in the stomach with a relatively weak arrow, so do you keep doing it? The 8th Espada looked at his opponent while grasping at his injury. Forgive the hesitation, I'm just trying to figure something out. Zamari said, leaping to the side as Uryu shot another few arrows at him. I heard that the Quincy were destroyed by the Soul Reapers, yet here one is as an ally of the Soul Reapers. What possessed you to join such an arrogant group? Arrogant? How so? Uryu asked as he dodged another attempt from Zamari with his speed clones. Shinigami strike down hollows as if that were the natural way of things, the Arrancar said, and made the same judgment with the Quincy when they cut them down. Because of that, and their unchallenged rule, they fancy themselves as gods or purveyors of some great justice. What gave them the right to judge hollows as being evil? To his surprise, Uryu began laughing. Calmly at first before becoming more and more loud. Of all the beings I met, you are truly the most arrogant fool I've come across. The Quincy said, earning a scowl from the Arrancar. Viewing your opponent as an equal? That was just insulting. But what gave the Soul Reapers the right to act as such? Your master Aizen is trying to take that very being's throne. And what's so unnatural about wanting to protect those that can't protect themselves? Uryu asked before disappearing and stabbing Zamari in his side with a seal Schneider that solidified its blade into a Jien. As for the hollows, what can you add? What have you done aside from eat and kill? You prey on humans, souls, even each other. What do you actually give to the world? Any of them? Even now, you are only the way you are because of a Soul Reaper making you that way. Is it so wrong to kill such a disgusting parasite? Uryu said with a glare as his aura changed, showing that he was done playing. I'd advise you give an answer, otherwise you'll die for nothing. You worthless hollow. Karakura fights, Lisa, Tatsuki, and Senna vs Luppy. The former Espada, Lisa, and Senna all released their Zanpakuto, resulting in Luppy unleashing his 8 tentacles, Lisa's large spade, and Senna's whirlwind staff. Tatsuki was holding her own just fine, but all she was doing was dodging the tentacles. Lisa was able to cut off segments of the Arrancar's tentacles while Senna served as a distraction. The tactic was going well as the two dodged another 4 tentacles coming at them and into 2 more, each one getting wrapped up. You've been quite the nuisance. Luppy sneered, readying another pair of tentacles to skewer the girls. But now, time to enjoy punching you full of holes. I prefer more endowed women with dash. Luppy was interrupted when Tatsuki threw a rabbit punch, hitting Luppy in the back of his head and making him bite off some of his tongue. As he was screaming in pain, Senna brought up her Mirokumaru and the rings on her staff began to cackle with electricity. Zap zap. She said with a smile, letting the rings come into contact with Luppy's tentacle. The grinding wind currents generates electricity, which is gathered into the rings of my Mirokumaru. I still haven't gotten the hang of it yet, but it's a nice skill to have. The shocks wore off and the 2 Shinigami had enough slack to escape from the tentacles. You tomboy beach. Luppy growled, glaring at Tatsuki before spinning his tentacles around like a buzzsaw and focusing all 8 on her. They were fast but Tatsuki was faster, dodging with a mix of shunpa and parkour. You're an espada? She asked, flowing around a bunch of tentacles she almost got tied in a knot. If you really are the quality standard for Aizen's top Arrancar, then the rest of us have nothing to worry about. She flashed in front of Luppy and punched him square in the face, jumping back as he tried to strike her with his tentacles again. I guess now's as good a time as any to try this out. She said, pulling out her blade and performing a martial arts kata. Ignite. Hidori. Her sword broke up into 4 flames that connected themselves to her hands and feet. Her hands now bore gauntlets in the shape of sharp beaks that were a fiery reddish-orange with greaves ending in a raptor-like claw. All 4 were so hot that the air shimmered from the heat. Time to burn, punk. She said with a vicious grin before shooting a large fireball at the disgraced Arrancar. You beach. He growled, defending himself with his 8 tentacles, then screaming as the heat started to burn them away. I'll kill Y-, he started before feeling his resurrection break and a blade digging into his back and another through his chest. It's rude to ignore your other partners. Lisa said, pulling her spade back along with Senna pulling her staff out. Course you were a former espada, so you couldn't have been that strong to begin with. The girl mocked as Luppy struggled to stay up. You. He growled before he and the others were trapped within orange barriers from the sky. Royal Palace, Ichibe City. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo roared, swinging his blades and unleashing the wave of compressed racier at the manifested Zangetsu. The Zanpakuto spirit knocked the blast to the side and charged at his master as the two continued their clash, Ichibe watching from the sidelines. Tensa Zangetsu. He thought to himself, being the master of names letting him know Zangetsu's Bankai. Letting him unleash 100% of the power within himself would certainly make him a fearsome opponent. But it's that Mugetsu form that I find more concerning. Ichigo's Ryuryoka was the darkest power he's felt in millennium, and while he controlled all things black he had to wonder who was stronger. Truly, he will be our ace against Yawatch. You picked well, my old friend. I wonder if His Majesty is tempted to make him a member of the Zero Squad from his power alone. The second Ichigo set foot on the disc, he noticed the pressure was slightly uncomfortable before walking on ahead. When the monk asked if he wanted to know the name of his Bankai, Ichigo answered with saying the very name of his Bankai. Instead, the boy manifested his spirit and began sparring with Zangetsu. Time passed and Otsu made his way to the monk's side, carrying a sword in a tank full of jelly. Well, Orihime has her sword, he said, as he sat by the monk, watching Ichigo fight his Zanpakuto. One that cuts her enemies and heals her friends. Seemed appropriate for that girl. Osho nodded as Ichigo brought the blades together in the form of a bow and shot a barrage of arrows at Zangetsu. Otsu's finger curled themselves around the hilt of his failure Saifushi, the sharpest blade he created. You really want to see how that will go? Ichibe asked, knowing that Otsu was itching to see the boy in action. See if it was more than just his sword. At the very least, I'd love to see this girl in action for once. He whispered before flashing toward Ichigo with blade in hand. Otsu was immediately kicked to the side when he came within striking distance of Ichigo, sending him tumbling into the building. If you wanted to use a surprise attack, you should be quieter. The hybrid scolded as Zangetsu faded back to Ichigo's inner world. So, you wanted to test out these blades? He gestured to Zangetsu and the sword in Otsu's hands as the smith got back up, laughing. That's right, Ichi. He cheered as he got into his battle stance. Now, show me what you got. Ichigo brought the two halves of Zangetsu together as the air ignited in pure black energy. Bankai, he said, becoming consumed by the energy and his voice becoming warped. Tensa Zangetsu. Kurosaki household. Masaki's fingers were bleeding, Kan was covered in scratches and bruises, Karen and Yuzu were sweating bullets, but the number of hollows were decreasing. After a few more minutes and one last shot, Masaki slew the final hollow and the swarm ended. Kan went to the twins and Masaki breathed a sigh of relief. The barrier held, her family was safe, and she could finally relax. Until the barrier shattered like glass. Before anyone could react, Masaki felt a sharp strike to the back of her neck before losing consciousness and falling to the ground. Kan was smacked in the head with an odd weapon in the shape of two crescents. So these are the targets? The twins looked up to a tall lanky figure with a wide hood and oily black hair, an eye patch, and a permanent display of teeth. His frown deepened as he sighed in disappointment. Well, I guess it'd fun to train them. In an instant, another being showed up between the twins and the Aaron car. We have what we came for, Noritora, call the retreat. The shorter horned individual said, grasping at the twins protectively. You sure, Okuiora? Noritora asked, grinning at the unconscious Masaki. Lord Aizen said that Ichigo cares a lot for his family. Imagine how broken he'd be if a heavy pressure fell on the Aaron car before he could finish his statement. We have his sisters. The fourth Espada said. That's more than enough. We are leaving. He let up the pressure and just as Noritora was about to signal the rest, he was kicked in the neck and sent flying. So long as I breath in this, or any other body, you will not take Yuzu or Karen. Kan growled, charging at Okuiora, who caught his fist with ease and blocked every other attack. Tell Ichigo, that upon my honor as the fourth, his sisters will not be harmed. He said before punching Kon back. He then opened a garganta and took the twins into his arms, seeing as they were both too tired to move, and made his way into Hueco Mundo. Kon was about to charge after him when he was smashed into the ground. You are one stubborn annoyance. Noratora growled, getting ready to decapitate the mod soul before pausing. Great, one of those losers is about to get killed. He groaned as Aizen made it clear that he didn't want to lose any Arrancar if it could be avoided, and he'd know if Noratora screwed that up. Fine. He stomped on Ichigo's body, gaining a sickening crack and scream, before releasing a feral hollow roar and making the Jillians bring down their negation to evacuate his allies. Well, maybe I'll get what I wanted anyway. He said as a new group of hollows were coming in. He created a garganta and walked through, leaving the Quincy and mod soul to die. Just as the first one was about to chomp down on the Kurosaki matriarch, Kon got up and crushed the creature's head. You want her? He said, coughing up blood and releasing a flickering light from his body. You can't have her. He stood, facing the coming swarm. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Obligatory reference. I can tell you with no ego, this is my finest Zanpakuto. Otsu said while sitting across from Ichigo in fine white robes with Zangetsu in its sealed state as a katana, with a dark blade and a black sheath with the many phases of the moon, starting and ending with the new moon. If in your travels, you should encounter the Spirit King, even he will be cut down. He presented the sword to Ichigo, who took it gingerly and with some measure of respect. Orange-haired warrior, go. Otsu finished. You are such a geek. Ichigo replied, shaking his head. TFS reference. Yami and Chad were struggling in a battle of strength with each other, yelling as one tried to overpower the over. The ground bending and shifting under the might of the giants. Around them though. This is so dumb. Tatsuki groaned, most everyone pausing to watch the two biggest combatants fight. This could not get any dumber. How about that? Luppy asked, pointing in the opposite direction to Isshin and Grimjow just punching each other into SBMSN. Yep, the impossible happened. Lisa said, watching the two not even bother dodging any punches. This got so much dumber. Should we return to killing each other? Zamari asked, not taking his eyes off the fight. Later, I actually want to see how this goes. Uryu said, with everyone in silent agreement. Kind of wish we had popcorn. Senna said, everyone again in silent agreement. Ulquiorra guided the twins down the dark halls of the Arrancar Palace to Aizen's throne room, hovering over them protectively while sending the occasional glare to Noratora. Karen kept a brave look on her face while Yuzu was shaking and clearly frightened, but they kept on walking. They finally came into a long expansive hallway lined with pillars, occupied with who they knew to be the enemy. Many different Arrancar were along the walls, with two Shinigami standing in front of a tall stone block that housed a throne at its peak, with the man they suspected to be Sosuke Aizen sitting on it like a king. Welcome, Yuzu and Karen Kurosaki, to our castle of Las Noches. Aizen said, keeping that dark, calm smile on his face. You may or may not know who I dash. You're going to die when our brother gets here. He was interrupted, raising his eyebrow to who he understood was the more gentle of the twins. Karen looked to her sister in surprise as Yuzu glared defiantly at the man that currently holds their lives in his hands. She soon smirked and joined her sister's level of confidence. Yep, when Ichigo II shows up, this place will be nothing but rubble. Many of the Arrancar shifted, either from fear or excitement, but Aizen's expression did not change. I'm well aware of how powerful he is. Aizen admitted. But him coming here is exactly what I want. There was a noticeable growl in the darkness behind Aizen as the man in question kept smiling. But you are still my guests here, despite just being bait, so I'll leave you in the care of someone I can trust. Melio. He called, making a green-haired Arrancar step forward. Yes, Lord Aizen. The now named Neliel had a skull with curved horns, a scar going down her forehead to her nose with a red mark across her face just under her eyes, in a form-fitting white uniform that covered her whole body. Your mission is now to watch over these two, Aizen said, earning a surprise from most everyone in the room. They are of no use to me dead, and Ulquiorra has an appointment with an old friend of his. He turned his gaze to his most loyal subordinate, who seemed to hesitate ever so slightly. I understand, Lord Aizen, he said, looking up to his master as Neliel took the twins. I will kill Ichigo Kurosaki. Karakura Hospital. Ryukin was finalizing some last-minute papers, the chaos from the hollow attack finally dying down to let him focus, when he noted that something felt off to him. His papers were in order, his patients were in stable condition, none of the Shinigami were showing up at his hospital, which meant that Orihime was back from Soul Society, so what was it that was making him feel uneasy? His answer came from a tapping on the window, revealing Hiyori, who had two unconscious Kurosakis with her. He acted quickly to open his office windows and called Kane to get him a couple of gurneys. What happened? The doctor asked as the wizard placed the two on the couches in his office, himself moving to run a quick examination of Masaki before moving on to Ichigo's body. Aizen used the recent swarm of hollows as a distraction. Hiyori started, standing back to let the expert do his work. He sent Arrancar to occupy Isshin and the other seated officers while sending another two to attack the house. They knocked out Masaki, beat the crap out of Ichigo's body, and took the girls. She reported, trying to prepare herself for when she'll have to give this same message to Isshin. What happened to Kon? Ryukin asked, moving to Ichigo's body. Ichigo seems to be fine, but Kon would nev dash. Kon's dead. Hiyori interrupted, holding up another file. Kisuke has been thorough, but Kon was a modified Jiken and there was only so much he could take. Ryukin took the file as Kane entered with the gurneys as Hiyori helped to move the prone bodies. Inside a human body, enhanced speed, strength, agility, nothing too out of the ordinary. Ryukin thought as he read Kisuke's account for the modifications he made to the mod soul. Regeneration in case of heavy damage to the body. Warning, proportionate to damage. So if Ichigo's body was fatally injured, it would take Kon's own life to fix. Hiyori, where's Kon's pill? He asked, dreading the answer he would be getting. I figured Ichigo's body was stable, so I extracted Kon's pill form. But all I got was dust. She said, sorrow evident. He just finished repairing Ichigo's lungs from the rib fragments. DMN it. The Quincy sighed before setting aside his emotions to do his job. Right, Kane, take Ichigo's body to the stasis room. Without a Jiken, he's essentially comatose. I'll be taking Masaki to get a few scans, make sure nothing's damaged. I should go, Isshin would want the casualty reports. Hiyori said before flying out the window, leaving the Quincy to do their job as Ryukin pulled Masaki down to radiology. Good luck, Hiyori. That's not going to end well. Royal Palace, Entrance Way. Ichigo made his way toward the edge of the entrance into the realm of the Spirit King, the royal guard there to see him off, with Otsu and one other of the Zero Squad missing. Kiryu Hikifune, a really plump woman with purple hair and a large rice spoon, and Senjimara Shatera, a pale, slender woman with long black hair and multiple long and bony arms with a radiant gold crescent moon ornament in her hair. Both in standard Shinigami garb along with Osho. So. I don't see that big pillar you used to come down to Soul Society, Ichigo noted after looking around for a bit. Is there another way for me to get down? Senjimara stepped forward. Two, actually. She answered as she got closer to the hybrid. We have our own Senkamen, but it can only be opened once a day and it was already used to send Orihime back to the world of the living. The other way is for you to take the stairs. She said as she tapped a ken against the floor and created a long spiral staircase that kept going and going. This route should take about a week if you go at your normal pace. Kiryu said as she pulled out a small package. I made you rice balls for the trip. Course there is the 72 natural barriers that separates the palace and Soul Society, which is why the Oken is needed. Senjumaru continued. The Oken is actually a power infused into our beings when we become member of the Royal Guard. I would have an outfit made of the Oken's power ready, but Osho and Otsu never told us what they were doing and never let you come to us. I'll need your measurements so *. Are your Haori made of Oken fibers? Ichigo interrupted, pointing at the master seamstress's Haori. Yes it is, why *. She started asking, feeling a little annoyed before Ichigo disappeared and walked by her, heading for the edge, with one of the Zero Squad's Haori in hand. I'll find a way to send this back, he said as a ball of cackling blue energy formed and was growing in the center and 10 feet away from the stairway. With no hesitation, Ichigo dived off the edge, held the Oken cloth in front of him, created a racier platform at his feet, and called out. Heido number 88, Hiryu Gekizoku Shinten Reiho. The energy blasted at Ichigo's feet and shot him down, disappearing from eyesight almost instantly. That brat. Ichibe sighed, almost laughing at the kid's brazen attitude. How does he expect to give me back my Haori? I'm sure he'll find a way. Otsu said, finally. Showing up with a guy with a hooked pompadour haircut. After all, I never thought anything would be able to damage Saifushi. He said, thinking back to his fight with Ichigo. His Bankai breaking then reforming almost instantly before shattering Saifushi and cutting him in half. Kid's terrifying enough as he is already. Hard to believe he can still get stronger. Indeed. Osho admitted, thinking about the battles to come. Maybe the next stage of his training shouldn't be in power, but in maturity. Squad 1 Meeting Hall. -52 confirmed dead, 93 critically injured, and the remaining Soul Reapers either crippled or too exhausted to keep going. Isshin reported from his monitor while Hiyori, Uryu, and Orihime were doing their best to change the numbers. Thankfully, with Orihime back, the injured and a few of the dead will recover while the rest deal with their exhaustion. All the captains in attendance shifted slightly, knowing that Aizen would attack and cursing themselves for not sending any more backup, though Unohana did immediately send out a relief unit to help in the relief efforts. That's the situation with the squad, but it was just a distraction from Aizen's real target. He took my daughters as bait to lure Ichigo into Hueco Mundo. Many of the captains shifted, knowing what was going to happen if and when Ichigo found out that Aizen has his sisters. We cannot let Ichigo learn of this. The Genryusai finally said. If he does, then he'd walk into whatever trap Aizen has ready for him. I have tremendous faith in the boy, but Aizen is never one to be underestimated. If he does have something to use to give him an advantage against Ichigo, I'd rather have backup ready and available to aid him. The commander ordered, just as everyone felt a disturbance in the air that preceded a thunderous boom that shook everything. After that, Ichigo appeared in the Squad 1 meeting hall, holding a Zero Squad Haori. That was neat. Ichigo said, folding the oaken cloth and heading for his teacher's side. After a couple of steps, he noticed that something was off. There was a tension in the air as the captains were looking at the hybrid. Did I miss something? Before anything could be said, Hiyori appeared by Isshin's side. Captain Isshin, most of the squad is now recovered but still need their rest, and Ryukin reports that Ichigo and Masaki are fine. She reported before noticing Ichigo's presence. Ichigo, Khan's last words were to tell you, upon my honor as the fourth, your sisters will not be harmed. Ichigo's eyes widened as the meaning of the statement resonated with him. In that same moment, Hiyori realized that that was probably a mistake. Ah. I'm going, she said before running off. Ichigo opened a garganta to the human world but was immediately tied down. Bakudo number 99, Kin. Yamamoto, Unohana, Kisuke, Yukitake, Tessai, and Hachi yelled out, tying the hybrid down with the strongest binding spell as multiple black wraps and iron south pinned Ichigo in place. Let me go, he roared, straining against the spell as the garganta was sealed by Tessai and Hachi. Zaraki stepped forward to lift up the hybrid and hold him before Yamamoto. Release me. I have to go. Out of the question, Ichigo. The dragon returned, stern in his tone. You are key to our battle against Aizen and we cannot afford to lose you now when the battle is so soon. He has nothing that can stop me. He growled as the sounds of tearing hinted to his binds breaking. Don't be rash, Ichigo. Think. Yamamoto yelled as Soifon came in and slapped a pair of sekiseki cuffs on him and cancelling his spiritual power. This is an obvious trap by Aizen to lure you away from the battlefield. He may have developed a new spell or technique to stop you, have an Arrancar specifically made to be able to kill you. Any of these possibilities makes it too risky to let you blindly rush in. A few more seconds of struggling passed before Ichigo finally relaxed. I'm sorry, Ichigo, but you cannot go. We can send Uryu, but we need you for Aizen. Genryusai looked to Isshin, who nodded and went to deliver the orders to his lieutenant. Zaraki, take Ichigo to the Muken prison and I want 2 captains watching him at all times. Ichigo remained silent, looking into the distance and into the eyes of Zangetsu, who manifested just seconds before Soifon cuffed Ichigo. The blade nodded and disappeared, planning their escape. With Uryu. I want you all ready to move out the second Ichigo shows up. Isshin said as soon as the connection ended, knowing that his son's friends were watching. Knowing they were exposed, they revealed themselves from behind the corner to the room. Except for Lisa and Senna, I do need some help within the squad. I thought the head captain wasn't going to allow Ichigo to go because of this being an obvious trap. Tatsuki said, earning a nod from most of the other teens. And he probably knows Ichigo is going to ignore that in favor of saving his sisters. Isshin answered. But really, any of you would be enough for Ichigo to defy orders and dive head-on into enemy territory, going into obvious traps, just to ensure with his own eyes that you're safe. He turned to face them as their commanding officer. You are going straight into Hueco Mundo, the land of the hollows, and the base of your enemy. Assume you are getting no backup and no aid beyond what you are bringing with you. Dismissed. He finished as the assembled teens looked at each other and nodded. And Uryu, the Quincy turned back to the Shinigami, if you could scrounge up some allies, that would be most helpful. Those 3 do seem willing to side with us, but how can we convince them of this kind of open rebellion? Uryu asked, knowing Isshin meant the Sternritters. They've yet to try to publicly help us. I'd say, let them know that this operation is strictly off record and to convince Yawach to allow this, then let them know it could go a long way to convincing you and Ichigo to join his side. He has been trying to get the Ishidas and Kurosakis to come to the light for generations, so that might help. Uryu mused as the rest of the teens left to begin their preparations. The Quincy flashed away, aiming for the apartment where the Sternritter hid away. Upon reaching the door and knocking, he was greeted by the lime-haired beauty queen, Candace. What is it? She asked, demanded from the bespectacled teen. Ichigo and I need your help. He said, Candace raising an eyebrow before letting him in. The living room was pretty Spartan in decoration, with mostly Quincy symbolism being the only decor. Basby and Bambietta were sitting on a couch and chair as Candace took her seat, the heat gesturing for Uryu to start pleading his case. Earlier today my cousins, twin sisters Yuzu and Karen, were kidnapped by Arrancar and taken to Hueco Mundo as a ploy by Aizen to get Ichigo into a trap. Basby started idly flicking his wrist, subtly pointing Uryu to a mirror. The teen looked and saw the white of a Sternritter uniform of the Vandenrake, telling him what he needed to know. You two must be really desperate to come to us then. Basby said, leaning forward to examine the Quincy separatist. Considering how much you don't want to get involved with the Vandenrake. This is family, Uryu returned now that he knew they were being watched. I thought that was something important to the Quincy. If His Majesty is willing to spare you 3, your help would be appreciated and we'd be willing to hear out Yawach. He said, turning around to leave. Urahara Shoten, we don't know when we'll be leaving. He said before exiting. Las Noches, with Okiura. The aspect of emptiness made his way through the halls of Las Noches. He swore to protect Ichigo's sisters, but why? What prompted him to say that to the soul inside Ichigo's body? He could have left out the part of protecting them, and that would have been enough to convince the hybrid to come here. But he swore to protect them. Why? If he killed Ichigo, what would happen to the girls? Their parents would likely be enemies in the coming war, which might lead to their deaths. Would Lord Aizen show them mercy, or would he try to recreate Ichigo with them? How would he protect them when this is all done? Would he even be able to fight Ichigo? He knew the hybrid was powerful, but it has been so long since they got a measure of his strength. Could he fight Ichigo? He shook his head to dispel such thoughts. He swore to kill him, swore it to his master, the man who gave him everything. His own voice, his sense of hearing, smell, and taste. Ichigo and he were on opposite sides, they were destined to fight. Besides, it would be moot if he would be able to protect the twins if Ichigo was capable of defeating him. Silburn, Yawacha's throne room. That's the situation, Your Majesty. Jugram informed the Quincy king, telling him what Uryu told the spying Sternritters. What are your commands? The Almighty thought about it, looking down at his hand. There was a strange sensation that he lost his connection to several of his children, and had a pretty good guess on whom he was severed from and whose idea it was, but not the how. They may aid their wayward brothers in the attack to save their sisters. Yawach said, the Sternritter Grandmaster bowing in acknowledgement. But should the chance come, I want Yuzu and Karen to be brought before me. Then, I shall remind them of their one true father. As you wish. Hashwalth said as he left the chamber, finding Bazby standing next to the throne room. You have your orders. See to it that you do not fail, lest you face His Majesty's punishment. I'm sure he'll be understanding if I can't find an opportunity. The Heat said as he pushed off the wall, making his way to the portal back to the living world. I doubt Ichigo and Uryu are willing to leave the girls unguarded. Gotta find a way to let them know that. Bazby planned as he made his way to the others to let them know to gear up. With Ichigo. Again, real sorry about this, Ichigo. Kairaku said, Toshiro standing across for him. But old man Yama does have a point. Ichigo laid silently on the ground, held fast with layers of one of the strongest binding Kido, and powers cancelled because of the Sekiseki HNDCFFS. The hybrid refused to say anything to anyone, just laying there in the endless expanse of the Mukin prison. Time passed as the elevator opened, signaling the changing of the guard shifts. The doors opened to reveal Soifon and Kamimura, both unconscious. What the dash? Hitsugaya whispered as he walked toward the elevator, and Kairaku shifted his stance slightly. Suddenly the two were pulled into the elevator by their necks, with a white-clad figure jumping out of the confined space. The second the two captains landed inside the elevator, the doors shut and the chamber began to ascend out of the prison. Took you long enough. Ichigo said as Zangetsu rose to his full height, holding a Haori in his hand. I assume you wanted this before we left. The hybrid blade said as he cut the Kido spell holding his master down. Ichigo leaped to his feet and held his bound hands forward, letting Zangetsu cut off the trapped appendages. With a grunt of pain, Ichigo regenerated his hands and quickly activated a Garganta. Already sensing that the rest of the captains were mobilizing. Ichigo took the Royal Guard Haori as Zangetsu dematerialized into his master and jumped through the tear in space. He formed his Raisure path as he slid through the infinite expanse of the precipice world, his brotherly instincts demanding that he head one way while the more reasonable part of him guided him to the living world to gather his allies. Squad 15 Barracks. It was deep into the night and the rescue team assembled outside of the Urahara Shoten. The three Sternritter were dressed in their military garb, still slightly on edge about being near enemy territory. Uryu had his squad uniform on, which was basically a Quincy outfit with black on it, and using his lieutenant's badge as a clasp for his cape. Orihime was wearing a similar outfit to when they attacked Soul Society, but with a belt that held several pouches for exorcism tags and a long katana at her hip. Chad was wearing a dark long-sleeved shirt with a rose emblazoned on the left sleeve, with his medallion proudly on display. Tatsuki was wearing her own version of Yoruchi's black suit, with a deep cleavage and red cloth wrapped on her arms and shins and as a belt. They stood in that spot, waiting until a tear in space opened up to reveal Ichigo, carrying a Haori. "Alright, listen up," Ichigo said, taking command of the group. "We are heading directly into enemy territory. Assume everything in there is trying to kill you. I don't care whether you kill them or not, but know this. Our main objective is to recover Yuzu and Karen. Breaking Aizen's army is just the bonus. Everybody ready?" He asked just as a Senkaman appeared, revealing Rukia. "I am now," she responded, everyone else gaining a confident smirk and nodding. Ichigo turned, flicking his wrist, opening a new Garganta and slipping on Ichibe's Haori. "Let's tear sheet up," the hybrid said as the group dove through the portal and began to make their way into Hueco Mundo. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Babysitting. Aizen had Neliel take the twins because out of all of his Arrancar, she would be the closest to keeping them happy and pacified. Aizen needed the bait in good condition to keep Ichigo in Las Noches. There, Yuzu. They're staying away. It's okay," Neliel was saying to a crying Yuzu as Karen beat the ever-living crap out of her two fraction for scaring her sister by popping up out of nowhere as soon as they got to Nell's castle. Maybe Aizen should have had Howlibel watch the twins. Rukia's departure. "Brother, please. I have to help them," Rukia pleaded with Byakuya, standing in front of the Kuchiki Senkaman. "They're our family too." "I'm well aware, Rukia, but you would help him more by joining the captains and keeping him in the Mukin until the war," Byakuya stated, hoping that Rukia's presence would calm down Ichigo. Those thoughts died when an alarm started blaring, specifically set up for if Ichigo escaped. "Never mind, go." The noble groaned, rubbing his forehead in pain while Rukia ran through the doorway between dimensions. What happened with Tsukishima? The Foolbringer laid on the couch in an isolated room inside the Shoten. It was dark, silent, and he was groaning in pain with an open bottle of painkillers on the floor. Jinjo stepped in, keeping his footsteps silent as he made his way to his old friend. "Hey man, how you doing?" he whispered, keeping as silent as possible. "I rewrote the blood memory of the other 6 Quincy that are our allies," the book reader groaned silently. "Learned that I shouldn't have even done the first one when my brain started hemorrhaging from the strain, died as my brain popped like a water balloon and am only alive because Orihime can hack death, which still leaves me with this skull-splitting hangover." Jinjo said nothing as he got up and left. A hangover would hurt less, in retrospect. With Ichigo's team. The group emerged from the portal into a long dark corridor, no windows to offer an image outside and no light to illuminate the way aside from a faint image of the passageway. The team looked around to try and get a sense of their surrounding and any possible enemies. Despite finding nothing, they remained on guard, some wondering if they were in Hueco Mundo at all. Orihime made her way to one of the walls and placed her hand upon it, one of her rings shining a deep amber glow that resonated throughout the corridor. "Terra says we're underground," she said, keeping her eyes shut. "There's a large room down that way with stairs that will lead us above ground." She pointed down the hallway as the group began to move. "Also, something big is heading toward us," she warned as she joined the group, prompting them to run. Ichigo released a small pulse for his pesquisa to get a read on whatever that something was. "There are 2 Arrancar in this building," Ichigo said as they ran. "Minor threats. Who wants to get a quick warm-up in? I could use one," Tatsuki said with a smirk. "I don't get to fight nearly enough." "Then I'll join you, Tatsuki," Orihime added. "Masamune has been itching to test himself out." They soon entered a large circular room with clear lighting and a single staircase, the one that Orihime said was the way out. Tatsuki and Orihime strode out to the center of the room while Ichigo and the rest went off to the side. It didn't take the residents of this area too long to appear as they blocked off the exit and entrance, both looking more like hollows than the usual Arrancar. One was an incredibly tall being with a stooped posture so his long arms brush along the ground, with black dreadlocks and a hollow mask that seemed more fitting at a masquerade ball than a hollow and revealing his deformed jaw. The other was much smaller, with a beak-shaped mask that only revealed the upper left portion of his pale face and seemed to be lacking any limbs. Minor threats, Ichigo Kurosaki? The smaller of the two asked, glancing at the hybrid in question. That's truly insulting, and this is unforgivable. He turned his attention back to the girls in the center of the room. Orihime Inoue and Tatsuki Arisawa, regarded as the weakest combatants of your group. Orihime glared at the Arrancar while Tatsuki faced the other. Oh yes, Lord Aizen gave us all information on the members of your team. Though those 3 extras are rather unknown, it's no matter. He brought out 4 spindly gray arms with 5 fingers each. Our duty is to keep you here. Let's go Damaura. He yelled as he began to shoot bolts of energy from his fingertips while the now-named Damaura raised his fist. Right Icelinger. He shouted, only for his fist and Icelinger's bullets to be stopped by 2 orange barriers, both gasping in surprise. It's true, I'm not one for fighting. Orihime said while holding her arms out to direct her sprites to form their shields, pointing upwards with a finger to complete her arrangement with Tatsuki jumping off the barriers. And I didn't get nearly the same level of training. She landed on the topmost barrier before kicking off and punching Damaura in the eye and setting his head on fire. The giant began to spin with the force of the punch, with Tatsuki hanging off the mask and kicking off to slam another burning fist in Icelinger's gut, shooting him back like a fireball. But to think you had a chance was insulting to us. There was grunt as Damaura forced himself back up, head all charred to hell and swinging about wildly. Shall I finish? Orihime asked, unsheathing the blade at her side. Tatsuki gave a smirk and gestured for her to go. Dashing forward, her defensive barriers offering her an incline, she rushed to Damaura's head and swung the katana down and cleaved his head in twain. She dropped back to the floor as the deformed Arrancar's head began to bleed and his body went limp. She turned to see Tatsuki giving her a thumbs up and Icelinger wrapping his arms around her. Don't move. He roared, coughing up blood and his clothes in tatters. If I see you move I'll dash, he threatened before Orihime shot toward him and stabbed both him and Tatsuki. Holy crap. Bambietta cried out. What the hell is with her? Candace asked as Orihime ripped the blade free and cut Icelinger in half, with not a mark on Tatsuki. While the Quincy stood in shock, those that knew Orihime and Tatsuki nodded their heads. At their improvements in combat. Good job out there girls. Ichigo told them as the group joined up. Is that Muramesa's new form? Yep. The exorcist cheered. Made to solely cut my enemies. Anything else, then it'll just phase through. Now that they got an explanation, the Vandenrake demanded answers. But did you know that was going to happen? Basby asked, still reeling from what he saw. For all the possibilities in the world of spirits, turned out some things could still surprise him. Not at all. I just knew Orihime would never harm me. Tatsuki said, showcasing her trust in her allies. Something of a foreign concept to the Vandenrake. Their celebrations were short-lived as the building began to rumble. Of course. Self-destruct features. Ichigo said as everyone groaned. Run! He shouted, prompting them all to head for the staircase and into the world above. The shaking tripped Orihime, which prompted Tatsuki to use Flash Step to help her, just as a bunch of large debris began to fall on top of them. Before the stones got too close to them, a bunch of small ball of Racier sank into the debris, causing them to explode into smaller, harmless fragments. Get moving girls! Bambi yelled as they ascended up the stairs and out of the collapsing death trap. Las Noches meeting room. The alarm rang out through the hollow palace of Las Noches, calling all the Arrancar inside to attention. The 10 Arrancar that made up Aizen's illustrious espada gathered to a single place while the rest of the Arrancar were given a message from Aizen by the Exequias, the termination squad of Hueco Mundo. The same message that Aizen was personally delivering to his 10 strongest soldiers. As predicted, we have intruders. Aizen said to his assembled elites. Ichigo Kurosaki took the bait. An image was projected, showing the invaders as they stood outside the entrance of the collapsed tunnel. They were conversing amongst themselves while looking at the majesty of the massive palace. A low growl of excitement escaped from Grimmjow while another of his espada scoffed. "These are the intruders," a dark-skinned elderly man said, grumbling in disbelief. "They are children." Most of the espada were equally unimpressed with the exception of the scientist among them and the ones that already fought against them. "It's disgraceful that you lost to that brat Grimmjow." "Enough barragan," Aizen ordered, returning everyone's attention to him. "While 5 of them are the Ryoka that infiltrated the Siriidii, these 3 extra Quincy are rather unknown," he said, realizing what they were when they manipulated Raisher to form a platform and were dressed similar to Uryu during the Soul Society break-in. "Keep a level head and let them come to us. Set up the battlefields to your advantage and fight to kill." The Quincy with the glasses, Uryu Ishida, and Ichigo Kurosaki were both regarded as targets for the captains of the Godii. "I will use a similar policy. None but the espada are to fight Uryu and only espada from rank 5 and on may battle Ichigo Kurosaki." With Ichigo's team, the group was speeding across the endless desert sands and to the only building in sight, Aizen's palace. Instead of running and expending energy pointlessly, Bazb came up with the idea of their current mode of transportation, a Raisher platform made and maintained by a Quincy, and taking advantage of the mass concentration of Raisher in the atmosphere. They've been riding on this mobile platform for 10 minutes, most focusing on the battles ahead while Candace explained the concept of shrifts to Orihime and Tatsuki and how Bambietta helped them. "Bambietta, you're up," Uryu called out, keeping time for the other Quincy to know when to switch who controls the Raisher platform. The Explode took her place next to the Heat as he relinquished control to her. All the while, Las Noches did not seem to change as they rode. Uryu then went to Ichigo's side, who never once turned his eyes from the giant domed building. "How much further do you think?" "2 DMN far." The hybrid growled. "It's been bugging me for time that we've been moving fairly fast but that building doesn't seem any closer. Then I noticed the trees." Uryu took a glance to the strange stone plants that decorated the desert sands, skinny and withered up close but the ones at the base of the building were like small pins. Meaning Las Noches was bigger than they thought and how far they were. "And we can't go any quicker because maintaining this transport is taking all the concentration we can muster at a time." The team groaned. Just how big is Las Noches supposed to be? Suddenly, in the distance, the sand began to shift and rise as a figure formed. A massive hollow that was made of sand with a mask that seemed like a normal face with a wide mustache, and a head like a sand castle. "So you are the intruders." It spoke with a deep echoing tone. "I will not dash." The top half of its body was blown apart suddenly, with Ichigo's smoking fist as the only indicator of what happened. Before anything else could happen, giant hands began to sprout from all around them. "It's pointless," the hollow said as he reformed. "I am Rinnegange, guardian of the white sand. All the desert sand is my body and the defense of Las Noches is my purpose." Bambietta made them serve and twist to avoid all the slamming palms of Rinnegange. "If any of you got any bright ideas to fight him, use them," she yelled as she narrowly dodged another palm with the ground giving way to a massive antlion pit. "And now we're screwed if we lose the platform. Fantastic," she groaned as she lifted them skyward and above the reaches of the sand. "Rukia, think you can freeze him?" Ichigo asked as Rinnegange created multiple tornadoes of sand. "I can try," she said as got to the edge and drew her circles. "Some no mai, Tsukishiro," she said and created a massive pillar of ice, leaving Las Noches untouched. "That should do it," she sighed as the desert calmed. After a small debate, it was decided that they'd bust through the wall instead of through the ceiling, especially since Bambietta gained a throbbing headache and a test shot revealed the dome was shielded. Candace took over the transport and brought them to the ground and to the wall of the palace. Finally, Las Noches. The hybrid smirked as the rest of the group readied for combat, until Ichigo heard something off. Rukia, did you freeze the sand under the circle as well? He asked before they dropped into the sudden sinkhole. Forest of Menos. Can you feel that? A woman asked her twin, two sisters looking off into the distance, sensing a disturbance in the air. Either something big fell in or a lot of somethings. I'd say a lot of somethings. The other sister said, sensing the individuals that made up the group. And it seems like they're being thrown. Must have said of Runaganga something fierce. Some of those seem a bit familiar, don't you think? The first asked as a man with a gazelle skull mask began to move. What is it, Ashido? We're going to check it out. Ashido said to the two. Let go, Yin and Yang. He ordered as departed. Right. The sister Arrancar returned, following their savior. With Ichigo's group. Okay, we got dragged into the sand, thrown away from Las Noches if our fall is of any indication, thousands of feet away from the surface, and stuck in the middle of nowhere. Uryu groaned as everyone pulled themselves to their feet. Can anyone give any good news? We're still together if that counts for anything. Basby said as Candace was having a near psychotic break. The teen sighed and resigned himself to count their blessings as Ichigo had a mental conversation with his Zanpakuto. Okay, according to Zangetsu, we're in the forest of Menos. The hybrid said as he gained most everyone's attention. Orihime was helping Candace fix her look. Apparently when one of us consumes a hollow, we get a portion of their memories. Instead of questioning the plausibility of that, I'm just happy to get some answers. Do any of them include a way out of here? Bambi asked. She and the rest brushed the sand off their bodies. Most Ajuchas claw their way through the sand and onto the surface, but that was before Aizen set up shop here. Ichigo responded, sensing three new presences coming toward them. We might need to find an intelligent hollow and ask a few questions, or get ready for our new guests. That got the others' attention as they looked in the same direction as Ichigo, sensing the three stronger erasure signatures as well as the swell of hollows coming. With a silent nod from the hybrid teen, the rest of Ichigo's friends took to a vantage point and hid themselves while Uryu almost had to drag the Sternritters into place for not taking the silent cue. Ichigo himself focused his energy and released a pulse of his hollow Ryatsu that said one thing: I'm strong and hungry. The swell of hollows disappeared almost instantly while the other three approached more cautiously, until they came into sight. Three figures dressed in fur cloaks with the one at point having various hollow masks decorating his, approached Ichigo from behind. That's close enough. Ichigo said, freezing the trio. Any closer and I might consider you hostiles. Are you a captain? The man in the mask asked. I don't recognize that symbol on your Hiyori. He said as Ichigo turned to face them, a short moment of surprise crossing his face as he recognized the twin Arrancar that aided Kasaka. That's a long story but the short answer is no. Ichigo responded, noticing Bambietta and Candace getting ready to strike but were restrained by Uryu. My current rank is the 4th seed of the 1st division. He said before the masked man appeared in front of him and swung his blade. Ichigo leaned back to dodge the swing and noted how old and weathered the blade had become. He was surprised when he felt the slight pressure of the blade in the air from the man's attack and his instincts kicked in. As the masked Shinigami was preparing his next strike, Ichigo slammed his palm into the man's gut and sent him flying into one of the quartz trees. Yin and Yang tried to move before Basby and Uryu held them down. The masked man got behind Ichigo and attempted another strike, which the hybrid barely dodged before tripping his opponent. As the Shinigami fell, Ichigo grabbed his mask and slammed his head into the ground, breaking the mask and revealing the face beneath. A regular man with spiky reddish-brown hair. Yield! Ichigo ordered as the man gave in. Master Ashido! The twins yelled, using their elemental abilities to force Uryu and Basby back. They charged at Ichigo, only for him to strike at their necks with his hand and send them crashing next to the now-named Ashido. Yin. Yang. Ashido called out in concern as he went to their sides. When he confirmed that they'd recover he turned his attention to Ichigo. You're strong for a non-seated officer. The hybrid said as the rest of the group appeared, surrounding the Soul Reaper and Arrancar. What's your story? Seeing not other way, Ashido told his tale. A few centuries back, myself and a team of Soul Reapers were sent to repel some hollows that appeared in the Soul Society. When they began to retreat, we followed them. Straight into this nest of hollows. My allies fought to their dying breaths until I became the last one of my team, staying here to fight and kill as many hollows as I could in the hopes that it would lessen the damage to the world of the living. The Soul Reaper looked Ichigo in the eyes. I'd ask if I was at all successful in that goal, but these two told me about Aizen and his army. And yet you kept them with you. Ichigo noted as the twins awoke. They are hollows yet you've kept them with you. Why? Maybe I was tired of being alone. Ashido guessed, unsure of the answer himself. I know they're still hollows, but they chose to be my companions after I saved them at their weakest. The girls pushed themselves to their feet and stood at their savior's side. Hollows on their own are dangerous creatures driven by the instinct to feed, something I've felt all too close to becoming myself on many occasions, but as Arrancar. He let the statement hang as he faced the hybrid. It may be treasonous but I see a potential here to do some good. I'll dash. Save it Ashido, the captain commander has already considered it. He interrupted, surprising Ashido, the twins, and the Sternritters. There's another threat coming and the idea of Arrancar allies were brought up to help in the coming battle. You might not be doing much good here in Hueco Mundo, but maybe you can back in the Soul Society. The trio of survivors thought for a moment. Even if we wanted to, they've been unable to maintain a portal out of here for us to escape. Ashido said, prompting Ichigo to flick his wrist and open a garganta, shocking the Soul Reaper. There's a small list of things I am unable to do. Ichigo explained. Go towards the strongest sense of erasure and you should return to Soul Society. Just maintain the spirit road so you don't fall. Ashido numbly walked toward the portal, reaching out with a shaky hand, almost disbelieving in the chance to finally return home. But his thoughts drifted back to the allies he had, the people that he lost. I appreciate the offer, but dash and slip of paper was pushed on him as he tumbled through the portal, his honed reflexes creating the spirit road just in time. That's not an offer. It's an order. Ichigo declared, steel in his voice. Ashido, you are still a member of the Godai. I'm the disciple of Genryosai Yamamoto and the fourth seat of squad I'm pretty sure I outrank, so now I'm ordering you to do this. Return to Soul Society, offer the evidence that Plan 16 is indeed a possibility, retire and become a teacher. That letter to the old man should help. He said, leaving Ashido no room to argue as Chad threw the twin Arrancar in after him. I'd drag you to the old man myself, but he's probably still sad with me. This wasn't exactly a sanctioned mission. The Shinigami couldn't help but release a breath of good mirth as he saw an old image of himself in the hybrid. Understood, sir. He said, looking over the note of verification Ichigo gave him. If I could ask something, please go to my friends' graves. He pointed off in one direction, to where he set up the memorial to his allies. They haven't heard another Soul Reaper's voice in a long time. Ichigo smiled and gave him a thumbs up before the portal closed. Time skip. They found the grave with little issue, it seemed like the only place in the entire forest that didn't feel like hollows. The moment was interrupted by a group of Ajuchas, one of which that called himself the Guardian of the Forest, who were almost immediately crushed by the Sternritters as Ichigo and his friends offered prayers to the fallen Shinigami. Under Ichigo's orders, the Sternritter disarmed the Guardian and began interrogating him for the exit out of the Menos forest. Despite the heat and the thunder applying their painful touch, the Guardian remained silent until Ichigo threatened to devour him, slowly. He quickly sang the location of the exit and Basby saw fit to remove his head. Moving at their fastest, they went through the exit and back to getting to Las Noches. Instead of risking another fight with Rinneganга, Rukia created more towers of ice which Basby melted and Rukia froze again. The result turned the shifting sands into a solid foundation and their path into Las Noches was unbarred. The Palace of Hollows was now invaded by Ichigo and his allies, something all the occupants of Las Noches felt. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Change of clothes. Absolutely not. Karen yelled, bashing a tiki-masked Aaronkar with a large spiked metal club. There is no way I'm wearing any Aaronkar clothes, she said before hitting another Aaronkar with blonde hair and an insect-like mask. I'm not wearing the clothes of the enemy. Karen Kurosaki. The tomboy flinched before turning to see her sister, already in a modest set of Aaronkar robes, shooting an angry pout at her sister. You have been wearing those clothes since yesterday. They're dirty and you reek of sweat. Go take a bath and get changed, she said, pointing out the door. Karen glared back as the Aaronkar cowered behind Yuzu before relenting. Fine. But I want our clothes cleaned before Isshin rescues us, she said, dropping the club. Where is Nilil anyway? Still playing with the bubbles in the bath. The twins sighed at the absurdity of their hostage situation. Noritora makes a mistake. The current 7th Espada was walking aimlessly through the halls, grumbling in anger over what had currently happened in his life. Dropped 2 ranks with one being claimed by the person that he hated the most, the chance to cause Aizen's chosen enemy some real damage was stymied by Ulquiorra, and now he wasn't even allowed to challenge this Ichigo Kurosaki and prove his strength by killing the hybrid BSTRD. Things have really been pissing him off lately. He then noticed the humidity in the air and the sounds of splashing and laughter. Oh yeah, Nilil did say something about the girls and bathing, he said before grinning. Maybe I'll go take a look. I hate that green-haired beach, but she has a DMN fine body. Maybe those kids have some potential too, he said to himself, not noticing Ulquiorra standing right behind him with a change of clothes. The next instant had Noritora buried to his knees in the ground, upside down. It took Noritora's fraction 10 minutes to pull him out of the ground and another 2 hours to remove his weapon from his butt. Taking all bets, I'd say Zamari goes first, trying to get payback from that Quincy lieutenant, and Noritora gets it the worst from Ichigo by saying something stupid. Grimmjow said, throwing a few coins on the table. Jin kept his smile and threw in some coins himself. I think you'll go down first fighting Ichigo, but Sale will go out the worst because he'll describe an experiment he plans to do. What is going on here? Aizen asked, walking up to Jin, Grimmjow, Yami, and Barragan all sitting around a table covered in coins. We're making bets on which of the Espada will get killed first and which dies in the worst way, Yami said before throwing his coins in. Noritora for both. He'll lose, but I'm betting Aaroniero eats him for power before anyone else kicks it. I'll take that action, Aizen said, putting down a single coin. Sale will die first, but the most horrific won't be an Espada, he said, earning a glance from his allies. If he fails, he will definitely die in the worst manner. First battles. Squad 1 Barracks, Captain's Office. Yamamoto was in his office, drinking tea and going over battle strategies. It was a given that Aizen would bring his Hogyoku with him and that it would make him stronger. The obvious solution would be to strike him with overwhelming force, like Zaraki and Unohana working together. Something both made clear would never happen again after they double-teamed Ichigo. Another possibility would be for Urahara to fight him with Tensai and Yoruchi as backup with him using his Hogyoku, but he stated that he himself is unable to use it. The final readily available option would be for him to crush Aizen personally, but he'd probably have something ready to counteract the captain commander. On top of that, almost everyone that could fight him could easily be trapped by Kyoka Suigetsu. That only left holding off that madman until Ichigo returned from Hueco Mundo, not even considering the possibility that his student was wrong and Aizen did have something that could kill him. He was soon brought out of his musings as a Garganta opened in front of his desk, a small part of him hoping that Ichigo made the smart decision by returning, but was not too upset when his student didn't return. Ichigo, you better come back soon. The old dragon grumbled to himself as 3 cloaked figures appeared before him, 2 Aaronkar and 1 Shinigami. Listen well you three, you'd best explain yourselves before I remove you from here. The Soul Reaper stepped forward, almost as if he was unsure of where he was. Captain Commander sir, the man said as he slowly regained his confidence, Ashido Kano finally reporting back in. After 3 centuries of being MIA in Hueco Mundo. That struck a chord with the old commander, of being told that a team of Soul Reapers followed a group of retreating hollows through the portal they used. Attempts at rescue were made, but they never really managed to open their own Garganta as the Research and Development Institute was not even a thought in anyone's mind yet. Within the first week of entering Hueco Mundo, my entire team was slain after being swarmed and exhausted. I spent centuries killing as many hollows as I could in an attempt to quell their numbers, only to meet with failure after Aizen took control. This year I met with the 2 Arrancar you see behind me and we came across 4th Seed Ichigo Kurosaki who ordered me to return to Soul Society. I see. Yamamoto said, processing the information. A Soul Reaper that seemed on friendly terms with Arrancar and that same Soul Reaper having centuries of survival and combat training under his belt. Surprise additions, but not sure how useful at this point in time. Did Kurosaki have anything else to add? Just that I should resign and become a teacher, and to give you this. Kano said, offering up the letter Ichigo gave him earlier. Genryusai took the paper and sure enough, it was Ichigo's handwork. All those calligraphy lessons ensured the man would memorize his particular writing. It said the same thing that Ashido said and the reasons why he should teach a survival and hollow combat course, but also that the Arrancar Yin and Yang offer more credibility to plan. If I may ask sir, what is this plan 16? A squad within Hueco Mundo itself, Yamamoto responded writing down orders on a new sheet of paper, one made up of Arrancar. The trio gasped in surprise as Yama gave Ashido the paper. Urahara proved the possibility of non-Shinigami being capable of purifying souls like Soul Reapers with a few Quincy, so there may be a possibility with Arrancar since they are supposed to be similar to Shinigami. To really test this, however, we needed test subjects. Something we've been unable to gather because we needed to focus on the war with Aizen. But with Ichigo in Hueco Mundo, and if Hollows truly respect and obey power, then I imagine we'll have plenty of volunteers for the future squad. Now go, I have more pressing matters to attend to. He ordered, making the trio move as they went to find a guide to the SRDI, where Urahara was now waiting for them. With Ichigo's group. Well, I can't say that I'm too surprised. Uryu said as the group came upon a room with 5 separate paths. Just really annoyed. 5 paths and 9 of us, Basby pointed out as the group scanned the doors. If we had one more that would make this much simpler. We could just form pairs and go on from there. I'll be the one to go alone. Rukia said, already picking out her door. No offense, but I'm still not ready to trust any member of the Vandenrake. She sent a small glare at her supposed allies, who had to concede that she made a smart choice on that. I'm heading forward alone as well. Ichigo declared, killing any protests before they began when his Ryatsu took visible form around him. I'm not stopping or slowing. Understandable. Uryu conceded. Basby, you're with me. The Heat shrugged as he went to Uryu's side. Sure you're alright with the enemy? He asked, almost curious on the other Quincy's stance. The moment you turn on us, I'll kill you. The teen responded with no hesitation. That's simple. I guess that leaves the 4 of us ladies and the big guy over there. Bambietta said, pointing to Chad. The same Chad that was already at his door and waiting for the signal to go. And he doesn't want to pair up either. That's okay, Oriheim said with a smile, we'll be a group of 4. The female Sternritters joined the martial artist and the exorcist at their path. So which one takes us out if we turn on you? Candace asked, positive that the 2 didn't stand a chance. Tatsuki cracked her knuckles and gave a scowl that would impress Ichigo. Guess. She said as the team got ready to charge forward. But not before Ichigo gave one last reminder of their goals. Fight to win. They get one chance to live and if they reject the offer, then they die. He dispelled his Ryatsu as the silent signal that prompted everyone to run forward, ready to face the challenges of Las Noches. With Ichigo, the hybrid charged down his chosen path, neglecting to use any of his speed techniques out of concern he may go past some random door that would lead him to either Aizen or his sisters. As he ran, he became aware of the Arrancar that was following him from above. Not as strong as Grimmjow when they first fought but still strong for an Arrancar. He stopped running to let the Arrancar speak his piece and said Arrancar did come down, after tripping and falling in front of him. Would you like a do-over? Ichigo asked, not quite fazed after dealing with the colorful characters in his life. The Arrancar rose up, covered in dust and pointed at Ichigo through the smoke. There's no need, he said with a thick Spanish accent. I am Dash. He then started coughing after inhaling some of the dust cloud. After he finished posing and coughing, he was finally revealed. Black hair with stylized horns with a mask headband with similar horns, a Van Dyke-style mustache and goatee. His outfit was the standard white but he had shoulder pads in his shirt with fringes on his sleeves and a red sash on his waist. I am Dordoni Alessandro del Sacacio, Arrancar 103, and I will defeat you Ichigo Kurosaki. He declared, gaining no reaction from the hybrid. What's with the number? Ichigo asked, knowing better than to judge by appearances. All we have on the Arrancar is that the Espada are ranked by power and the rest are in the order that they were created. I honestly doubt that there are over 100 successful Arrancar in Hueco Mundo. All of which is true Nino. Dordoni admitted, continuing with the extravagant movements. However, those of 3 digits are known as the Privaron Espada. Having lost our place among the current Espada, we are under them in strength. He said, finally settling into a combat stance similar to Savat. Though, I must admit that I am defying orders right now challenging you Ichigo. The hybrid raised an eyebrow as the Arrancar continued. Lord Aizen made it clear that only those of rank 5 and on of the current Espada are to fight you. So you're challenging me in hopes of proving yourself and taking back your place among the Espada? Ichigo guessed, not even going for Zangetsu. I hope you understand why I won't be using my full power in this. If Aizen is concerned about you, you must indeed be incredibly powerful. Dordoni returned, already behind Ichigo with a kick ready. That kick was stopped when Ichigo caught his ankle and slammed him into the ground before throwing him further down the corridor. Dordoni tumbled for a bit before getting back on his feet, with Ichigo right in front of him. The Arrancar jumped back and got back into his stance. Not going to release your resurrection? Ichigo asked before dashing forward too fast for Dordoni to retaliate and punched him through the wall and into another room. I understand. Proving your strength or gaining more strength by fighting with a handicap is something I've done often. But if you're only doing this fight to take back your place as an Espada, then go all out and prove to me you are worthy of that rank. Dordoni forced himself to his feet and glared at the hybrid. After I kill Aizen, I'm going to need my own court of Espada. Ichigo said, surprising the former Espada. What do you mean Nino? Dordoni asked, completely shocked. When Aizen is dead at my feet, I will claim the throne of Las Noches. Ichigo clarified. After doing so I will need my own court of Espada. Even now, Soul Society is experimenting with the possibility of creating a squad comprised of Arrancar. Their duties would be to monitor Menos Grande and hunt down any extremely dangerous hollows that flee to Hueco Mundo. As he spoke, Dordoni was filled with a mix of disgust but also curiosity. If he took that deal, he'd be at the top again, but was he willing to wear himself in such a manner? Was the kid someone he'd follow? Know this Dordoni, I've been taking this fight seriously from the beginning. Ichigo said, earning a look from the Arrancar. Just because you haven't seen me release my Shirkai, doesn't mean I'm holding back. I've been on guard since the moment I entered Las Noches. So show me your power and prove to me you are worthy. Don't underestimate me Nino. Dordoni said, resting his hand on his sword hilt. Show me why you should be my king. Whirl, Giralda. He called out, creating a tornado around himself before being revealed. He had horns on his shoulders and armored calves that had small exhaust horns that generated his controlled wind. He sent bird-headed serpents made of wind at the hybrid, only for them to disintegrate as soon as they got close to Ichigo, and a crushing pressure slammed him into the ground. Dordoni struggled to get up, but he could not even get air into his lungs as Ichigo slowly walked up to him. Just as he was about to pass out, the pressure released and he collapsed, gasping for breath. "You get the point, I win," Ichigo said, helping Dordoni back up. As the Arrancar got to his feet, he threw a knee at Ichigo which the hybrid caught. "If you want to convince me that kindness toward my enemy should be cast aside, I only consider Aizen my enemy here." Ichigo opened a garganta. "Now, do you take my deal or no?" Dordoni looked down the empty chasm, then back to Ichigo. He thought back to when he was in Espada kneeling before Aizen, and felt that somewhere along the line he would eventually be kneeling before Ichigo in much the same way. In Hueco Mundo, the strong reign supreme. And this no, this king would truly deliver the promise of a new future. "I await your command, mi rey," he said before going through the portal. With his business here done, Ichigo continued his run deeper into Las Noches. With the girls. The quartet were making their way through their chosen path, not talking but watching their surroundings and each other. Tatsuki and Orihime were made aware that they were allies for now but also of the Quincy army that would eventually come as their enemies. Uryu himself told them that the Sternritters are rebelling against Yhwach out of personal interest, and just like the Quincy Soul Reaper himself, they had to be ready to end them if they become enemies. The Sternritter ladies themselves were also aware of their gaze and were unwilling to do anything that would eventually jeopardize their future survival. They reached the end of the corridor and into a room full of columns with a spinning disc coming down at them. They managed to dodge that, but then they were almost crushed by two giant tentacles each. After avoiding those, they all settled on top of a separate column to get a look at their opponents. A girl in a white frilly gothic Lolita outfit with wings, her mask resembling a spiked hairpin in her purple hair, and purple teardrop tattoos on her cheeks. The other was Luppy, already in his resurrection state that seemed roughly patched together. "Looks like you were too slow, Luppy," the female Arrancar said, bringing the disc of her weapon to her side. "Shut up, you beach," Luppy growled back, glaring at Tatsuki. "There's only one person here I want to kill, so bother yourself with the rest, Srirachi." "PSS off you dash," the now named Srirachi was saying before noticing Candace in front of her. "You got dirt on me, you beach." The thunder growled before unleashing several million volts of electricity into the Arrancar, filling the room with unearthly screams of agony. Luppy himself was shocked by the sudden attack on his ally. "You should really pay attention to your own fight," he heard Bambietta say as ball of Rashur sank into his clothes and resurrection limbs. "It could be over in a flash," she quipped before a tentacle began popping like firecrackers. His screams of agony almost drowned out Bambietta as she continued. "Or one could enjoy the fireworks show," she said as another tentacle blew up in a set of larger explosions. The Arrancar lost his footing and fell to the ground, another explosion on his back, stopping him from slamming into the ground from the fall and causing more damage. Bambietta had to choke down the sadistic pleasure she was deriving from this. Despite knowing this was their enemy, she still wanted to be a better person. She decided to finish it with one last explosion that engulfed him and barely left him conscious. "I'm done here. What about you, Candy?" she asked her fellow Quincy, who was holding a charred and unconscious Srirachi. "I've been done," the Thunder said, dropping by the explode while Orihime and Tatsuki joined them. "She's still alive, I think. Candy hates it when her look is damaged in the slightest," Bambietta explained, setting the Arrancar next to each other, Orihime covering them in her healing field. "Don't bother with Luppy, Orihime," Tatsuki said, doing something that Ichigo and Yoruchi always advised her in battle. "Trust her instincts. I've got a bad feeling that he'll just try to stab us in the back." "How does that power work anyway?" Bambietta asked, knowing that they shouldn't kill Luppy after she touched him with her rapier and, by extension, Yhwach's rapier. It would only make the man stronger in the end. I can reject certain events or factors within the boundaries of the Soten Kishun. Orihime explained. Can you reject my rapier inside his body? Orihime looked at the Quincy and considered it while listening to Shuno and Iam explain the possibility. I'll try. Orihime closed her eyes as she focused on her task, resulting in Bambietta feeling the disconnect of her bombs on him. Any luck? Yeah. Now do we kill him or leave him? She asked as Tatsuki dropped a flaming axe kick that created a towering geyser of flame. It apparently woke Luppy, if the hellish screams were any indication, as his body was quickly burnt away into ash, moments before Suruchi herself woke up. What's going on? She asked, slowly getting more startled and said. What's happening? She sat up and was met with a blade to her face. Here's the abridged version. Bambi said, keeping the blade pointed at the Arrancar's neck. We spared you to give you this one-time offer. Join us or die. Ichigo will become the future king of Hueco Mundo and he'll need a new court of Espada. This is your one chance. She shot a ball at Suruchi's chest that sank into her but was shortly dispelled by Orihime's barrier. If you say yes, that is incentive to make sure you behave. Otherwise. She shot another ball at another pillar, causing it to explode magnificently and getting the point across to the Arrancar. Well. Suruchi glared at her captors, not seeing a way out. Fine, I'll join. She growled out reluctantly. As Orihime continued to heal the Arrancar, Candace noticed that Tatsuki was away from the group. She went to the tomboy's side and saw the puddle of sick that Tatsuki made, just as she released another stream of vomit. Don't ever let it get easy. Candace said, patting the martial artist's back. When that happens, you stop being a person. You don't recognize the thing you see in the mirror. It's something else, something you'll never forgive yourself for being. Tatsuki let out a few final coughs as her stomach settled. I'll keep that in mind. Tatsuki said as the group got together, Suruchi now joining with them. Let's go. She said as they continued their charge. With Chad. Chad made his way deeper into Las Noches until he came upon a dimly lit room, the only source of light coming from a series of evenly spaced square holes in the ground giving off a faint blue light. Standing on the other side of the room was an Arrancar with a large orange afro and a form-fitting white outfit that exposed his chest down to his navel with large frills on the collar and thighs with his mask fragment resting on his forehead like sunglasses with a star in the middle. Chad stopped running and stood across from the Arrancar. Yasutora Sato, 4th seat of Squad 15. The Foolbringer said to the Arrancar. He nodded and got into a fighting stance which Chad soon did as well. Gantenbainne Mosqueda, number let's have a fair fight. He said before the two charged at each other, Gantenbainne with Sonido and Chad with Bringer Light, and began exchanging blows. Each side trying to gain the upper hand in the bout of fisticuffs. At the moment, it was pure martial arts and continued with that until they jumped away from each other. The Arrancar brought out his punch daggers that were attached to his wristbands while Chad activated his fullbrain. They charged at each other once more and threw the first serious punch, resulting in Chad's energy blast blowing the Arrancar through the wall and into the next room. He readied his shield arm and entered the next room. Tell me something. He said as he entered the room to find Gantenbainne in an armadillo-like shell that covered his arms and he was charging an attack. Chad brought his shield in front of him as the blast hit him, digging his feet into the ground to avoid being completely blasted away. During that blast, he gauged the strength of the attack and threw it aside. The look of shock on Gantenbainne's face was enough to give him a window to speak. My friend, Ichigo Kurosaki, is going to conquer Las Noches. When he does, he'll be needing a new court of Espada. He offered, surprising Gantenbainne. Once that wore off, he pondered the offer. On one condition, Yasutora Sato. The Arrancar said, making his decision. I will fire my strongest attack at you. If you manage to block it, then I'll side with you. I'm not without honor and I only want to fight on the same level as my opponents, and I feel you've been holding back. I'll take that bet, but I must correct you. Chad said, bracing himself for the attack. My power, Fullbring, is a constantly evolving power. If there is another level to it, we have yet to truly awaken it. So I constantly give every fight my all until I do awaken that next level. He then gestured Gantenbainne to make his attack, to which the Arrancar nodded. He brought his dragon maw fists together and began to charge his attack, pouring almost all of his energy into it. Roger del Dragon. He roared before firing, the energy taking the form of a Chinese dragon. The energy slammed into Chad, pushing him back by an inch, as he readied his left arm. Once his left arm was charged, he reached out and grabbed onto the blast before crushing it in his hand. Gantenbainne was gasping for breath. Chad stood strong as he walked over to the Arrancar. My loyalty to the next king of Hueco Mundo, he said as he knelt before the man. Chad held his own hand out for the Arrancar, who took it and stood back up on shaky feet. Sato then stopped, sensing someone coming from behind, before blowing a hole through the wall and dashing through it with Gantenbainne struggling to follow. This guy is much stronger, he thought, referring to the Arrancar that was currently following him. With Rukia. Rukia activated her Shirkai as soon as the group separated, choosing to be proactive rather than reactive in the case that she comes across an enemy. Soon she found herself in what appeared to be outside of the giant fortress, with a sunlight-bright sky with clouds and a spanning town beneath her. Did Aizen create his own sky within Las Noches? Rukia wondered, going the only direction left to her, forward on the narrow walkway. She heard someone appear behind her and speak in a high-pitched, childish voice. Would you like me to explain it to you? She turned her head to nothing before continuing down her path, where a figure in white appeared. Come with me, it said in a dark, heavy tone, completely unlike the earlier voice. Preparing herself for battle, Rukia followed the being into the building that her path led her toward. Once inside, she was trapped in darkness before a dim lighting came up to offer some visual in the room. A greenish blue was the predominant color, with the walls being cylinders stacked side to side. Good, I can finally relax now. She heard it speak, turning to finally see the figure for herself standing on the level above her. Sorry, but I simply cannot stand the sunlight out there. It does not reach inside the palace. It wore a dress that covered its entire body, with a noble's jacket that had a large frilly collar. The most defining feature of the Arrancar would have to be its head, a symmetrical cylinder with 4 holes on each side. Allow me to take off my mask and greet you properly, it said in that childish tone again as a hand rose to the bottom of its mask. That's when its tone changed again, this time to something all too familiar to her. My name is Aaroniero, he said, revealing a face very much like Ichigo's but with black hair. The face of her former mentor, Kain Shiba. Aaroniero Ararori, Arrancar number 101. He just gazed down at Rukia while the girl tried to process what she was seeing. Is that really you? She asked, telling herself that Kain couldn't be here, that she killed him long ago. The words of her husband ringing in her head that she had to consider everyone here an enemy, that they would try anything to kill them. And psychological warfare was a specialty of Aizen's. It's good to see you again, Rukia Kachiki, the man said as he dropped down. Rukia took a moment to steel herself and focus, listening to her instincts. Hey, what's with that look on your face? The man demanded. Aren't you glad your beloved Kain Shiba is alive and well? He said, looking annoyed at the doubt on the current lieutenant's face. He can definitely pass for Lieutenant Shiba, I'll give him that much. Rukia thought to herself while Shirayuki spoke to her. Do not be fooled, Lady Rukia. Even for a trap, why would Lord Kain side with Aizen without trying to contact you the moment you came into Las Noches? The Zanpakuto said to her master. Right. Chances are that this is an illusion that he uses to disguise himself. The ice user thought, examining her surroundings. He wanted us to get out of the sunlight, so that must make him vulnerable. I have an idea. She slowly walked towards her mentor, reaching out with one hand. Lieutenant Shiba, how is this possible? Kaien walked toward the girl, slowly closing the gap. Easy Kuchiki, just sit down and I'll dash, he said before noticing a line of frozen air between himself and one of her hands. San no mai, Shirafune. She said, creating a blade of ice that pierced through Kaien's side and began to spread its frozen touch. He tore himself away from the blade, but the ice still spread. It was clever to try and disguise yourself as Kaien, but I've long since made my peace with his passing. The man glared at her while the Soul Reaper pointed at him. Carriage of thunder, bridge of a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. Bakudo number 63, Rikujikuro. She chanted quickly, trapping him in place. Sum no mai, Tsukishiro. She drew 2 circles before trapping him in a pillar of ice, but unfrozen. I guess this is where I offer you the chance to join Ichigo's court when he kills Aizen, but impersonating my mentor is unforgivable. She growled venomously before putting on her hollow mask and shocking the man in front of her. She pointed her blade upward and began charging a Zero. Just as the trapped man broke free of the Kido, Rukia unleashed her blast of energy. Destroying the ceiling and the walls, letting light come down all around them. She watched as the face of Kaien Shiba melted away and was replaced by a large glass tube with ball inside, each with a face and hollow mask. How stupid are you? The darker voice returned. If you actually attacked us, you may have hurt us. The Aaron car blew a hole through the ice as Rukia left the building area. Now die Rukia. The child voice screamed as Rukia threw a bala and shattered the hollow side, making it fall. As it began screaming in pain, the other head looked down to see that its initial stab wound was still spreading its ice. My third dance freezes anything it pierces and all of the surrounding area, eventually. She explained before pointing her blade at him and repeating that technique, stabbing each of his joints. You lost this fight the moment you thought I was still clinging to my past. She said, leaving the Aaron car to scream in rage and pain as ice slowly consumed it. Until silence remained. With Uryu and Bazb. The final 2 Quincy were going down their own path, no words were exchanged as they felt the battles going on around them. Or lack of in some cases, their own being the best example. They felt their allies get into battles but they themselves have yet to encounter anyone. What made Uryu more uneasy was the sense that hallways were turning. It wasn't what he saw, it was what he felt. That each hallway turned when they went halfway through it. The musing was cut when a hole appeared beneath their feet and they fell, the hole closing as they went through it. Looks like we'll get to see the enemy soon, Uryu. Bazb said as they went down the slide. Think I can fight if you land the killing blow? Instead of giving an answer, Uryu asked a question. Bazard, what do you feel ahead of us? The teen asked the older Quincy, who took the chance to analyze the various Ryatsu signatures they felt. One that really stands out among a group of weaklings. Why? The heat responded as they reached the end of the slide. It's what I don't sense that's the problem. Uryu returned as they hit the ground rolling before readying their bows. Come on, be ready for any thing. Uryu said, slowly becoming horrified by what he saw. What the hell are those? Bazb asked as the figures noticed them. All were bone white with pitch-black skull masks and various states of deformity. Oversized limbs, crooked jaws, extra body parts, gigantic and tiny, but none of that was the worst. Uryu saw them, but he couldn't sense them. As if they had no souls. The first began to move toward the Quincy and Uryu immediately shot it between the eyes, something that proved ineffective as it released a blood-curdling screech. Shoot them. Uryu ordered, switching bows to pure Quincy mode. Shoot them, Bazard. I can't sense their souls. Bazb immediately brought out his crossbow and began shooting, his shots proving just as ineffective. Once the abominations closed in, they jumped away. Initially using Hirenkyaku, but the ratio became too thin to use and settled for blood-enhanced jumps. The hollows kept chasing them around, trying to eat the Quincy, as Uryu tried to come up with a plan. Any bright ideas? Bazz-B yelled out as one of the deformed hollows almost bit him, making the Quincy slam his fist into the creature's face and sending it back. Well, that worked, he said as he and Uryu watched the creature regenerate and continue attack. Okay, how is that fair? He complained as the two noticed all the ratio in the area was being absorbed into the hollows. Well, we know they're immune to ratio attacks but not physical, Uryu surmised as they continued to dodge. Think your heat can handle this? He asked as they got back to back. I'll need more ratio than what's in this room, he responded as the freaks got closer. Think you can punch through the ceiling? Uryu asked, both Quincy activating their blood venae and artery. You might as well find out, he said as the hollows swarmed the two, the pair barely managing to get any breathing room. Bazz-B eventually jumped off the ground and sprang off one of the hollows' heads to reach the ceiling. He buried his fists into the stone and began to tear through it as fast as he could. Uryu, being left on his own, was currently very grateful that Yoruchi was so insistent that he take up martial arts. And the kickings he received in his training gave him the endurance to power through while hollows dug their teeth into his flesh. Bazz-B punched his way through to an area outside of the hollow's absorption range and activated his script. Burner Finger 3. He called out, reducing the stone structure to melt into lava. The molten rock poured on top of the hollows, burning them away faster than they could heal. With more ratio, Bazz-B quickly dived down to grab Uryu before filling the room with his most intense heat. The white abominations were destroyed and Bazz-B got Uryu out of that room as fast as he could. He set the teen down as his veins began bulging, the weakness against hollows coming to haunt the Quincy. Uryu, on the other hand, pulled out a silver tin with small black capsules. He tapped one, which was absorbed into him, and soon the hollowification faded. Prototype medicine for hollowification that Urahara was working on, Uryu quickly explained. Never thought I'd get that desperate. And most fascinating, they heard someone say. They turned to see a man in glasses with pink hair, dressed like a scientist, walking toward them. Sorry I couldn't entertain you personally, but I wanted to study your and the other Quincy's abilities. Nice to see my suspicions were correct on how to counter your kind though. Who are you and what were those things? Uryu growled, pushing himself back to his feet as Bazz-B got ready for another fight. The Arrancar bowed in an over-the-top gesture. I am the 9th Espada, Szayelaporro Grands, he answered, before looking them in the eye. And what you were fighting were Lord Aizen's failures. Failures? Bazard asked, wondering how such pains were only failures. Yes, Ichigo Kurosaki does warrant a good amount of concern, the Espada continued. Enough that Lord Aizen would like to have something ready to kill him. That left a bad feeling in the Quincy, as Szayelaporro gave heavy hints that there was a successful monster ready to devour Ichigo. I feel alright with telling you this, since you won't be leaving here alive. They all dropped into another room, with the Arrancar unsheathing his blade. I have all the data I need to kill you. Madness crushed. With Aizen. So, Ichigo plans to take my army for himself. Aizen thought as he watched the progress of his intruders. He can have Hueco Mundo, but only after I take the throne of the Soul King. A little surprising that he has that Haori though. The scans he was able to get on Ichigo's cloak showed that it was far different from the usual captain's Haori, there was a power in it that seemed to resonate. His hand reached to his chest as his scar began to throb, as it had ever since Ichigo came to Hueco Mundo. A part of the traitor wanted to put it out of his mind, but he knew that it would never end. Not until he killed Ichigo himself. In a way he was proud of Ichigo, truly his greatest successful experiment, but he wanted the boy dead. The greatest threat to his ambitions was not the other captains, it was the single hybrid. It looks like Aaroniero's dead and most of the Privaron chose to follow our favorite Strawberry. Jin said, watching from the doorway to the monitoring room. What to do now? The former 5th Division captain turned to his right and left hands, Tosin following along. Aizen calmly took a sip of his tea. Have the top 3 Espada ready to move out. He answered, looking his 2 longest serving agents. Once Ulquiorra fights, we move out. The 2 nodded and began to go in separate directions. Jin. Aizen called out, gaining the man's attention once again. What are you planning? I recognize that smirk. The fox's smile widened as he opened one of his piercing eyes. Just a quick little trip to remind our dear Ichigo that I know how to hurt him. He said before disappearing with Shunpa. With Uryu and Bazb. As soon as Szayelaporro said that he had enough data, the room was filled with his fraction, many Arrancar that seemed either incomplete or failed to become humanoid, that began to assault the 2 Quincy. Sayel just watched as the 2 struggled against his army, knowing that the Quincy were at a disadvantage in the room they currently occupied. He had a device that could disrupt the Quincy ability to manipulate the ambient erasure and surrounded them with stone that absorbed the remaining erasure, negating their main skill of erasure manipulation. It was only their own reserves that kept the Quincy going, channeling the power through their veins. Bazb was barely hanging on, not used to fighting in the absence of erasure. Uryu was faring much better, due to his training with Ichigo and the new Quincy style of drawing erasure, had plenty of his own and even managed to use a Seal Schneider. He seems to be doing much better than I expected. Sayel muttered to himself, not really able to do anything about the erasure inside a person until he could get in close himself. It's not like I'll run out of fraction. One of his larger servants slammed a fist into Bazard while Uryu slashed one in half, his Seal Schneider, which before to solidify as Uryu got better at controlling it mid-battle. Perhaps I'll fix that anyway. Sip, for Nicholas. He calmly said as Uryu saved Bazb from another attack. This is quite the embarrassing oversight for the Quincy. The Sternritter admitted as the 2 stood back to back. To learn we could become so vulnerable so easily. You'd think that someone in the Vandenrake would suggest being able to fight in a place where one couldn't HRNSS erasure. Uryu panted out. I'm starting to run out of my own. How many more are out there? Irrelevant for you. They heard Szayelaporro say before some weird grey tentacles with a set of big red pouches wrapped around the pair. After the thing undulated for a bit, it spat out the 2 Quincy while the fraction cheered that the battle is over. The 2 looked over to see Szayelaporro, now in a multi-layered skirt with baggy sleeves that had purple extensions while his torso was a segmented grey garment with 4 of the tentacles that attacked them earlier coming out of his back. One of the red extensions on his odd wings began to inflate over his hand before bursting and revealing a small chibi doll of Uryu before repeating and getting one of Bazb. I'd prefer to play around with you longer, but I don't want to keep patching up my fraction. Too much work. I'll end this now. The 2 Quincy pushed themselves up and Bazard flinched when he felt something poke his head. Are those things voodoo dolls or something? He asked, noticing Sayel pressing a thumb against his doll's head. Pretty observant of you. The 9th Espada complimented. Indeed, these dolls are now you. Whatever I do to them, will happen to you. He said before flicking Bazb's head, knocking his own back. But the real fun is inside. He said before opening up Uryu's doll. All these colorful little bits, like shells or marbles, these are your organs and muscles. He held up a few thin needle-like bits. Observe. He snapped them all in rapid succession, causing blood to spurt out of Uryu's ankles and wrists. I'd much rather have you more fully intact, but I'll probably be bored of Quincy soon enough. I'd love to dissect that hybrid, but Lord Aizen made it clear he's to be destroyed. I'll have to entertain myself with studying the bait. He said, making the 2 Quincy flinch. What do you mean? Bazb asked while Uryu seemed to go into shock. The Arrancar laughed sadistically as he looked at the Sternritter. Obviously I mean those 2 little girls he had stolen from that Squad 15 captain. He said, looking more and more ecstatic. Ichigo Kurosaki's little sisters, not as enticing as their brother but present so many more options. And two of them? What to do? Dissect them, breed more potential hybrids, so many choices to make. I don't even know where to begin. He starting laughing madly, before noticing something. Erasure was gathering, the walls around them breaking apart into the energy, which began flowing to Uryu. You. He growled, glowing with power. Will not. He stood on his feet, Szayelaporro's fraction disintegrating in much the same manner before the power went to the Quincy. Touch my family. He roared, burning wings of light exploding from his back. With Ichigo. Uryu, Ichigo thought as he was keeping track of all of his allies, I know I shouldn't worry. But I've never felt this power coming from you before. Be safe, I don't want to even think that you're in trouble. He continued running before sensing a familiar presence down the hall. The hybrid slowed to a stop as the person on the opposite side slowly revealed himself, Grimmjow Jagerjax. I remember being told that only rank 5 and on were allowed to fight me. Ichigo said to the blue-haired Arrancar, who starting bearing a savage grin. Judging by that smirk, there was a little rearranging in the ranks of the Espada. Correct? Had to beat the crap out of the previous 5th to get his title. Grimmjow responded, showing no hostilities to the hybrid that once crushed him. Didn't help much against that old man of yours, he still slapped me around. But I wanted to save something special for our rematch. The Espada said, releasing his Ryatsu as he prepared to fight. Had to come to terms with some things about myself, let go of old desires, all for this chance to fight you again. Ichigo stood unaffected by the pressure as Grimmjow went on. I'm ready to give this my all, 100% of my power to destroying you. Ichigo took a moment to crack his neck and knuckles, before sensing something around Rukia. Grimmjow, Ichigo started as he turned his head to where Rukia currently was, let's take this outside. Try to keep up. He said before disappearing in a burst of speed, confusing the panther before he noticed what Ichigo felt. That DMN Soul Reaper. He cursed before following. With Rukia. It wasn't too long after she cut down the imposter Arrancar that tried to shake her resolve, promising herself to visit his grave after all was said and done with Aizen, when she found herself lost in the city within the fortress. Her only other tells were the familiar Ryatsu of her allies, but no trace of the twins. Seeing as everyone started to emerge into the desert city, she figured now would be a good chance to regroup. Ichigo could handle himself, her husband was too competent to let himself die. Probably get back up and... More annoyed than anything else. She took one more step before she felt a familiar presence almost over top of her, like a viper ready to bury its fangs into her neck. Tsugi no Mai. She called out, quickly readying the second dance of her shuriken. But it was not effective as a pair of hands almost ripped the blade out of her hands from behind her. My Kuchiki, it has been a while. She froze, forcing herself to turn and see Jin Ikamaru with her blade in his hands. And looked at you, a lieutenant now. You must feel so proud of yourself. He tossed her snow-white blade over the side and flashed right in front of her. Rukia made a lot of progress in her training, but Jin always made her feel weak and helpless. Before he was a soldier of the Godai, now he was the enemy and had no reason to not kill her. She tried to back away, but he took hold of her shihakusho and held his blade to her. Now, our data is limited ever since we defected, but there were some rumors that you and our favorite hybrid got married. Do you mind confirming that? He asked, dragging the edge of his zanpakuto along the skin of her chest. Shallow enough to sting and draw some blood, not enough to scar just yet. Either way, I wonder how Ichigo would react if you died. He said so casually they may as well could just be making small talk. The pressure of his blade began to increase to where it cut through to her bones, letting out a screech of pain before it disappeared and she fell to the ground. She opened her eyes to see Ichigo, once again to her rescue. I wonder, what part of you thought it was a good idea to try this where I could find you? Ichigo asked, looking at the man he just buried into the wall. I put a pretty nasty scar on your boss when we first tried to kill each other, and that was after you and Tosin tried to hold me back. Did you think I was just sitting on my butt this whole time? Jin slowly pulled himself back to his feet and rubbed his jaw. Well, I just wanted to serve you a little reminder. Jin said, still holding his blade in his hand. A similar lesson you gave my captain. That you can still be hurt. He said before his blade shot toward Rukia. She was paralyzed, watching the steel coming for her, before it was stopped in Ichigo's crushing grip. I became aware of that when he had my sisters kidnapped. Ichigo growled, glowing with power. Now leave and tell Aizen that when I find him, I'm going to kill him. Jin pulled his blade back and looked deep into Ichigo's eyes. And here I was worried he might be too soft. He thought to himself before brushing off the dust. I'll be sure to do that. Ciao, Bella. Aha. He said before disappearing with Shunpa. Did he just try to vocalize a PRD? Ichigo thought before turning back to Rukia, who was finally able to catch her breath. You alright, Rukia? He asked, kneeling down to the petite Shinigami. I'll be fine, just some scratches on my chest. She said, pulling her shihakusho apart to examine her injury. Looks like you managed to get a message to me after all, Jin. He thought, recognizing that the scratches formed a word. Now there was only one thing to figure out. What the hell did Jin mean by Negro? He thought as he read her chest while she healed. Looks like we all came out to this area of Las Noches. He said, gaining Rukia's attention. You'd best go regroup with the others. I've got a score to settle. Grimmjow appeared behind Rukia shortly after that. The ice user looked at the espada and back to her husband. I'll be fine, go. He ordered, making her jump off the side to retrieve her sword and begin running off to join the others. Quick question, does everyone in Hueco Mundo use Spanish? He asked, surprising Grimmjow. Yeah, I guess. The Quinta replied, scratching his head. Why? So that means Jin's real message to me is, black. Still doesn't tell me much. Just curious. Ichigo replied as the two got ready to fight. With Chad. The Foolbringer and his Arrancar companion kept running as the two behind them followed, closing in more and more with every step. Chad felt ready to go another round, but Gantenbainne was drained of his rapier and needed the chance to build it back up. He wanted a bit more time for the two of them, but whoever was behind them threw something at Sato. Sensing the attack, he dodged the large and oddly shaped crescent-bladed weapon and it dug itself into the sand. Just as it was being pulled back, Chad grabbed onto the weapon and turned to face his opponents. The Arrancar chasing them was tall and lanky with long black hair with an eye patch covering his left eye, wearing a massive spoon hood with his jacket exposing his chest. With him was someone less bizarrely dressed with an eye patch over his right eye and a turquoise mark on his cheek that had dirty blonde hair. Noritra Gilga. Gantenbainne said, turning to face their opponent. Currently Espada number 7. And you're a traitor. The Espada returned, getting into a tug-of-war match with Chad. Being too weak to stay in Espada is one thing, but betraying Lord Aizen is another. He growled, pulling himself and Sato closer together. Tessera, kill him. He ordered, making his fraction unsheath his blade and flash in front of the Privaron. Nope. They heard someone call out as a ball of fire slammed into the Arrancar, sending him into the chain of Noritra's weapon. The collision created a small amount of slack that Chad used to slam the axe-like weapon into the Espada and sent him flying back. The Foolbringer spared a glance to the side to see Tatsuki showing up. Chad, we're regrouping. Rukia showed up and told us to find Uryu. You two aren't going anywhere. They heard Noritra growl as he rose back to his feet. The only place you're going is the grave. He roared out, releasing his Ryatsu. With Uryu. Wah, what the hell is this? Szayelaporro asked as his anti-Quincy room disintegrated around him, his fraction breaking apart into rapier, all of which gathered to the winged Quincy glaring at him. That's enough out of you. He yelled, pulling out some more of Uryu's voodoo organs and crushed them. Blood spurt from the Quincy's mouth and he staggered, but he still stood strong and never stopped glaring at the scientist. I don't believe it. Bazard thought as he watched Uryu absorbing more and more Reisha. Is he doing this subconsciously? Reizotengai inside his body? Is he reconstructing his body completely blind as it gets wrecked by this creep? His eyes widened as the burning light on Uryu's back slowly solidified into archangel wings. Die. Why won't you die? Szayelaporro yelled out desperately as even his resurrection began to get absorbed. Uryu did not say anything as he pointed his wings to the espada and gave his death sentence. Licht Regen. He said the feathers in his wings shot toward Szayelaporro, each one was like a seal Schneider as the blades tore him apart. Bazby watched in disturbed awe as Uryu mercilessly destroyed the espada. The only thing out of place was small tendril that touched Uryu before being converted into Reisha. When he ended his assault, Szayelaporro was barely more than a torso and head. What? What was that? He spoke, feeling that his life was slowly ending. He activated his Vollständig. Bazby answered as Uryu released the glowing and collapsed, still alive but in rather critical condition. And he still manages to hold himself together. That kid is scary in his own right. He thought as he noted the mix of blood and Reizotengai. You can think of it as the Quincy's resurrection, or Bankai. But how, that room should have completely cancelled Reisha manipulation. The Novino coughed out, the blood draining faster and faster. And it did, but he managed to use the greatest of manipulation skills. The heat replied, walking over to the Arrancar scientist. Sclaverai. He didn't just take it, he enslaved it. All the Reisha around him became a SLV to his will. So powerful that it tears apart the bodies of spiritual beings. So whatever trap you tried to pull on him as he tore you apart was doomed to fail. Your freaky little tentacle became his ammo the moment it touched him. The Arrancar managed to glare at the heat and let out a defiant roar as another massive tentacle appeared behind the Sternritter, disguising the other small one making its way to his leg. The heat lived up to his script as he created a scorching shell around him that reduced the attacks to nothing. And your room is gone, so I'm free to use my abilities. He said as he went back over to Uryu and gently lifted him up. Enjoy your last moments, I think a slow death is fitting for one like you. Too bad we can't prolong it. Bazard Black then disappeared from the area, leaving behind the dying Arrancar. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. If you can understand, know this. You keep bugging me about them, and I'll block you. Ishin's first mission as captain of Squad 15, set between the establishment of the squad and memories of a nobody. So, this is the place. Ishin thought to himself, looking at the tall and imposing mansion. He received recent orders about a group of powerful individuals that was a black stain on Soul Society's history, which led to a mishap that had affected the world of the living but making them essentially soul-sking vampires. It was thought that they were wiped out by the Quincy some time ago, but the remnants had gathered here in an old mansion in Karakura town. Alright, let's do this and be done with it. He said before disappearing with Shunpa. Inside the mansion. Jean Korea, leader of the Bounce, looked over his assembled brethren. The last of their kind and his army in their mission of vengeance, but there were a few more components missing. His ex-wife, Yoshino, the cornerstone of their eve of power, was being retrieved by his loyal Shinigami champion. Soon, he would have all he needs to attack the Soul Society, and make them pay for their mistakes. Hi there. He heard someone say, turning to come face to face with Isshin Kurosaki. Who are Dash? Jean asked before Isshin cut him across his chest, killing the Bount instantly. The others tried to respond, but the captain was too quick. Next was an elderly man that Isshin killed by twisted his neck until the bones snapped apart. He turned to his next target as a swarm of snakes lashed out to bite him. Heido number 33, Sokatsui. Isshin cast calmly, pointing with his fingers and unleashing a massive torrent of flames and leaving a charred corpse. He felt something land on his back and begin to possess him. He retaliated by stabbing himself through the chest and whatever was invading him, the sounds of a man screaming giving some indication that he succeeded. He flashed back to the door and pulled his blade out to heal himself. Let's see, 5 left. He thought as the sounds of crashing alerted him to something heading his way through the floors. He dashed to a man, desperately moving cards around as a large ball and chain burst out of the ground. It stopped when Isshin grabbed the man by the head and kneed him so hard his skull exploded. A woman with a Chinese shirt managed to pull out a sword and fan while 2 kids were standing behind 2 stalks of water globes. He threw his zanpakuto into the chest of the woman before flashing to the hilt and ripping it out of her chest. He spun and released his Zangetsu while releasing a torrent of flame so hot the water evaporated. Whatever else got hit signified the twins' death as they withered away in front of him. That only left 1 bout remaining. A large man with an orange mohawk and red hair. Are you hesitating? He asked as Isshin studied the man. Wondering why you're not trying to fight now. The captain replied. I know when I'm outmatched. And when my fate is looking me in the face. The Bount answered, holding up the metal ball that was his power but doing nothing with it. I thank you for at least making it quick with some of them. Are you truly the final Bount? Ishin asked, wanting to be sure in this mission. Should be 1 other left, a woman by the name of Yoshino. He answered, just as a Soul Reaper came in with a beautiful woman. What the dash, the Shinigami asked, seeing naught but empty clothes and bloodstains of his dead comrades. His eyes fell to Isshin and his captain's Haori with rage in his eyes. You bast dash. He tried before Isshin disappeared from his sight and felt his strength leave him, blood pouring from his chest from 2 lethal stab wounds. The woman, Yoshino, gaped in shock at the speed and ruthlessness Isshin used and understood just as much this was the end. For what it's worth, I'm sorry to do this. Isshin said, earning an understanding nod from Koga. Neither Bount had time to say anything before Isshin cut through their skulls, destroying their brains. Intoxicated despair. Chad and Tatsuki vs Noritra and Tessera. The Espada blocked with his axe as Chad threw an El Directo punch, letting the energy of the attack blast the Septima away. As the energy dissipated, Sato appeared in front of Noritra and used Bringer Light on his hands to enhance his strike by bringing both fists down on his head. Tatsuki, in the meantime, was keeping the Fraction busy. The Arrancar, Tessera, was growing more and more aggravated. His master was having more trouble than he should. They came in when the intruder was weakened by his fight with the Privaron, but apparently the Foolbringer was in better condition than they thought. The Fraction got into a blade lock with Tatsuki and looked over to Chad, charging a Zero in his eye. The martial artist recognized the energy build-up and who was the proper target. Sato, Zero. She yelled out just as Tessera fired his attack. Chad was wrestling Noritra, trying to get the massive axe away from the Espada, when Tatsuki called out the warning. He shifted his body weight to turn them around and let Noritra take the brunt of the blast. When the Arrancar's grip slackened for that instant, Chad ripped the weapon out of the Espada's hand and slammed the axe down on him. With that chance, Chad used the blade to pin the Espada down with his own crescent axe. Master Noritra. Tessera called out in horror. Tatsuki took advantage of the matter by kneeing him in the fork of his legs, making him drop as pain coursed through him, then tore his blade out of his hand and tossed it aside before pinning him on the ground. Gantenbainne took the blade and kept a distance away from the group, looking to give his allies an advantage. UBSTRDS. Noritra growled before Chad stomped on his head. Be quiet and listen. The Foolbringer said, ensuring he had the Espada's attention. Screw you. Noritora growled out, starting to glow as his power gathered around him. Pray. Santa Teresa. The part of his axe that had pinned him down charged with power, pushing Chad away from him. Tatsuki's grip slackened as she tried to shield her eyes, giving Tessera the chance to free himself as he managed to roll out from under her and charge at Gantenbainne. The Privaron was too stunned to stop the fraction from turning his blade around and stabbing him in the stomach. Crush! Veruga! He yelled, becoming cloaked in smoke as he grew in size and transformed. When the dust settled, Chad and Tatsuki saw what their enemies became. Tessera grew into a giant warthog-esque minotaur creature, towering over both of them, while Noritra gained lopsided crescent moon horns and another pair of arms, all of which held scythes. If you were going to say that whole, stay down and I might get to live in the new Las Noches after your buddy kills Aizen, crap, then you can forget it. The Espada roared out. I'm not just here to kill you for intruding, I wanted to draw out that BSTRD Kurosaki. Chad narrowed his eyes in a glare at the Arrancar as he continued. I know you are one of the weaker members of your team, so I really shouldn't bother, but killing you would definitely net me a fight with that hybrid Aizen is so worried about. I don't care about peace or fighting weaklings, especially ones that have to rely on some beach's help. Now Tatsuki got said. But, if I kill the two of you, then I'll get him to come to me. Then I'll let him in on a little secret, I'm the one responsible for the attack on his house. Would've killed mommy dearest if Ulquiorra didn't stop me. Tatsuki was shaking with rage while Chad seemed to relax. I see, then I guess the only thing left to do here is to show you mercy. The Foolbringer said as he looked at Tatsuki and nodded, signaling her that they had to go all out. Ignite, Hidori. Tatsuki calmly said, gaining her gauntlets and greaves while Chad began to charge himself up. The Foolbringer's arms slowly growing in size. Mercy? Noritra asked as Tessera stood on the opposite side of the pair. Are you looking down on me, you BSTRDS? The mercy we'll show you is the fight you want. Chad answered as his armor extended further over his body. If you followed through with your course of action, Ichigo would destroy you. That wouldn't be a fight, it'd be a slaughter. Noritra continued to glare at the two as they got into their fighting stances. It's for your sake that we kill you here and now. With Bazb. Right, Uryu is in really bad shape. The Heat thought as he carried the unconscious and bleeding Quincy across the desert sands, being careful not to aggravate his already serious wounds. Orihime said that if anyone gets this badly injured to take them to her immediately. She's not too far away from here, Ichigo, Tatsuki, and that Sato guy seem to be busy, not as a decisive win as I would have liked, but this is going fine so far. He had to slow down as he noticed Uryu starting to cough up little mouthfuls of blood. His control is slipping, I'm running out of time. He stopped to safely readjust Uryu to a more stable position on his back when he noticed their guest, a black Arrancar that seemed to be glaring at his companion. And you are? My name is Zamari Ruros, I am Espada number 8. The Arrancar said, still glaring at Uryu. I have unfinished business with that Quincy you are carrying. Does this mean you're still sore about being called out on your bullshit? Bazb asked, causing Zamari to glare at him now. Yeah, he told me about you and the other Arrancar he had any knowledge on. And let me tell you this, you hollows deserve it. Quincy have the same problem of just taking, but at least we can learn and admit it. My people were born that way and we had to adapt and adjust. Hollows are born from the loss of a heart and become animals. The few hollows I've seen that retain enough sentience to talk are usually cruel and vicious. So, where was Uryu wrong in his statements? Zamari disappeared with Sonido. Shut up BSTRD. The Arrancar roared as he was immediately in Bazb's guard, plunging his Zanpakuto into the Sternritter's stomach. The blade connected and snapped against the Quincy's blood-reinforced skin. What? The Espada gasped, staring at his broken blade before looking up to Bazard's fingers. I know I should make the offer for you to surrender, but I think Ichigo will understand. Bazb said, looking down at the Arrancar with contempt. Burner finger 4. He said before creating a sword of flames and slicing through the Espada's limbs. Okay, double time. I took too much time with this. Bazb continued, readjusting Uryu on his back and leaving the crippled and screaming Aaroniero behind. With Orihime. Okay, they're heading in out direction again. Bambietta reported as Candace managed their transport platform this time. Should be another minute or so. You sure you can? Heal him? The Explode asked the Exorcist as she finished healing Rukia, who managed to catch up to the group. There's very little I can't heal Bambi, so long as I can focus. Orihime replied, turning her gaze over to where Tatsuki and Chad were currently fighting. Which might actually be a challenge. The Sternritter and Soul Reaper cast their sight in the same direction as Orihime, feeling the fluctuations of battle. We have to have confidence in them. Rukia said, trying to cheer up their healer. They've both made tremendous progress since I first met them and your squad doesn't have weak any members. Orihime smiled as Rukia tried to boost her confidence, and once again the Quincy thought about their own allies, and how many would have the same confidence or even try to help. Both shuddered when they thought of a certain ally and her particular style of help. Sorry I'm late, ran into a roadblock. Bazby said, appearing on the platform and gently setting Uryu down. Most of his organs and muscles were crushed. He's barely keeping himself together as it is. Shuno, I am, Soten Kishun. She ordered, making the two spirits come out and double the efficiency of the healing. The outside evidence of the damage began to reverse at a rapid pace, and the Sternritters release a sigh of relief when they felt the spirit threads holding Uryu together release with no consequence. He'll be fine. Thank you for looking after him, Bazby. Orihime said with a smile, making the Quincy blush. Is this what happens when allies actually care about one another? He wondered to himself, thinking about his old friend, or rather his former friend. No problem. This just leaves Sato and Arisawa, fighting another Espada, and Kurosaki, who seems to be fighting his own battle. He said as a large cloud of dust erupted in the distance. Though if I had to guess, they're just warming up. Ichigo can handle himself. Rukia said, taking charge of the matter as the highest-ranked officer in the group with Uryu still unconscious. For now, let's find Chad and Tatsuki. They'll need healing when they finish their fight. Everyone still awake agreed, and Candace turned them towards the two humans. Chad and Tatsuki versus Noritra and Tessera. Tessera tried again to crush Chad beneath his fist, letting his transformed state size and power give him the edge against the Fullbringer. Chad caught the fist and dropped slightly, cushioning the force of the blow and using Bringer Light to solidify the sand beneath him to gain a proper foothold. With that, he threw Tessera's fist to the side and threw him down onto the ground. Tessera took the chance to grab onto Chad and slam him against his fist. Coughing in pain as the air was forced from his lungs, Chad could only weather the attacks as Tessera slammed him into the ground and began to crush the Fullbringer in his grip. Chad struggled against Tessera's strength until he freed one of his arms. El Directo! He yelled, blasting the Aaroniero in the face and forcing the giant Minobor to drop him. As soon as he landed, he charged right back at Tessera and shot toward the Fraction's stomach with another El Directo upon contact and sending Tessera back quite a ways. Taking the chance he had now, he turned to see how Tatsuki was doing against Noritra. You beach! The Espada yelled, swinging his scythes to blow away the flames the martial artist kept using. After the Aaroniero released their Zanpakuto, Chad and Tatsuki switched opponents. Chad went to Tessera to match power for power, and Tatsuki to Noritra because the heat of her flames would exhaust him faster. Eat this! Tatsuki yelled, throwing a punch at the Espada. He raised a scythe to block it, while using another of his scythes to shield his face. As he did that, he swung his other two scythes at her, which she used to flip over him and strike him in the back. The talons of her greaves left a trail of sparks against his skin, but he was hurting in a different way. Damn it, that burns! He growled as he revealed another pair of arms. One grabbed onto Tatsuki and slammed her into the sands in front of him. There's nothing that disgusts me more than some beach trying to be on the battlefield. Noritra roared as he got ready to slash Tatsuki to bits, only to be stopped. He was struck with a vicious uppercut from Chad. The espada was thrown back as the Foolbringer aided his ally. "Everything all right?" he asked as he helped Tatsuki back to her feet. As she did, they saw Tessera charging at them. "Stubborn." "Very." Tatsuki agreed as they looked to each other and nodded. The pair ran toward Tessera, with Chad just a little ahead. As the two sides neared each other, Tessera bending over to swipe at them, Tatsuki jumped onto Chad's back and shot toward Tessera's head. She was creating a concentrated fireball on her foot and snapped it at the warthog mask. Meteor strike. It exploded violently on contact and threw the large Aaroncar off balance. That gave Chad his window and he punched the ankle of the Aaroncar so hard they heard bones snapping before Tessera collapsed. "Funka," Tatsuki said, shooting down onto Tessera, creating a pillar of flames as her fist connected. The air was filled with the roar of flames and screams of agony as Tessera yelled one last thing out. "Master Noritra. Forgive me." The Aaroncar yelled out as his resurrection form faded away and the real body was consumed in the fire. Tatsuki rose to her feet and glared at the espada, who managed to return it. Chad noticed this and turned to face his opponent, who promptly fired a Ciro from his tongue. Chad just barely managed to transform both of his arms to block the attack, pieces of his shield breaking off against the onslaught. When it ended, Chad went back to his devil's left and giant's right and readied himself for the next bout. "What's with that look?" Noritra asked the pair, noticing Tatsuki backing off. "You think you can beat me just because there's two of you against me now? Seems a little cheap if you ask me, but it doesn't matter. I am the strongest." He yelled out in defiance, pointing a scythe at the Foolbringer. Chad, however, was unimpressed. "The strongest?" Sato asked sarcastically. "I heard that the espada were ranked by power and you are the 7th espada. Doesn't that mean that there are 6 that are stronger than you?" Noritra glared at the Foolbringer as he continued. "I also get the feeling that if I was worse off from my fight with Gantenbainne, you wouldn't hesitate to try and strike me down. A sound strategy, but hardly one that would cement your strength in this world." Chad could sense the growing anger in the Aaroncar as he continued. "Landing the killing blow or fighting an already weakened opponent doesn't prove that you're stronger, only that you cheat yourself on your quest for the title of strongest. Noritra had enough and lashed out at Chad, who circled behind the Aaroncar with bringer light. "Who the hell are you to lecture me?" The espada roared, swinging 3 of his scythes at Chad and trapping him between his blades. "You need some Beach's help just to fight me." Chad slammed his head against Noritra's and the two were locked in. "I don't care what it takes, I'll kill everyone till I'm the strongest," he continued, 2 hands dropping their scythes to impale Chad's body. "Starting with you and that friend of yours." The espada pulled back as Chad dropped to his knees, bleeding quite a lot from the holes in his sides. The Aaroncar regained his bloodthirsty smirk as he raised a scythe, ready to decapitate the Foolbringer. In Chad's mind, he heard his grandfather's voice. "You weren't given this strength to hurt others." The old adage that Chad learned to live his life by, once again motivating him to pull out whatever laid within him to fight and protect. He clenched his right fist as threw his strongest punch to date. As it connected with Noritra's stomach, Sato's coin glowed and there was a bright flash just before the Aaroncar was sent flying into one of the stone pillars and causing it to collapse. Chad was panting for breath while his arms glowed, feeling a drain on his soul. Noritra soon rose from the rubble, glaring at Sato. "You bstrd." He growled, wincing as he felt pain throughout his body. "He managed to fracture a couple of my ribs there," he thought, assessing his internal damage. "I'll kill yo dash." He growled before a wave of heat washed over him. He turned to see Tatsuki standing in the center of an inferno. "Shunko," he heard the martial artist say before she flashed in front of him and slammed her armored fist into his face. What followed was a massive blast of fire that started from her fist and continued burning until he was shot away from her because of the pressure. As the fire died, Tatsuki collapsed from exhaustion and Noritra felt his life leave him. All my power, and I die because of some beach. He mentally roared in rage. His hierro did well to protect him from physical attacks, but the heat from Tatsuki's attacks bypassed that defense and roasted him. He was trying to get to his feet before he was pulled up by one of his arms and came face to face with Chad once again. My mercy for you is now complete, Chad said as he changed his arms. Brazos dobles, Diablo. He slammed his fists into Noritra's sides, causing a colliding shockwave that destroyed the Espada's insides. The last thing Noritra could consciously feel as he began choking on his own blood, was regret. Ichigo vs. Grimmjow. The clashes were explosive as each side struck at the other. Grimmjow in his Resurrection and Ichigo with his two Zangetsu. The two danced a lethal routine, strikes aimed to kill, blasts aimed at vitals, but neither had an edge over the other. They kept that up. All around them was a wasteland, scarred by the clash of the warriors. They took the chance to pause and breath. You've certainly gotten better, Grimmjow, Ichigo said, honestly meaning that after considering their first encounter. What about the offer I've been making to each Arrancar I've come across? The panther scratched his head in thought. When we first met, you really set me off, Kurosaki. The Espada said, looking the hybrid in the eye. There was a confidence and cockiness that just set me off because I saw you as a kid that was overconfident. Then you proved me wrong and kicked my butt. Afterward I was punished and humiliated for my failures and I wanted nothing more than to kill you. Then I was offered a way, to gain the power I needed to fight you again, but it came at a cost. Every Espada represents an aspect of death. Mine is destruction. And I was told that if I wanted the power I so desired, I had to throw away everything and embrace my aspect. So here's my deal, tame me, quell my thirst for destruction, then I will join you. As he was talking, his hair was slowly turning black and his armor fell off to reveal more black covering his entire body, shining like obsidian, and a truly feral snarl on his face. Resurrection, Segunda Etapa. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Why Yuzu and Karen didn't get boyfriends, while Ichigo was still Squad 15's lieutenant. The twins were sitting together in the lunchroom at Shino Academy, trying to enjoy some time together in between classes. Trying being the operative word in this case. My family's hosting a party for the other nobility in Siriidii. I could show you how to mingle with them, ladies of Kurosaki. One handsome young noble, among a crowd of boys, suggested. I've always had an interest in archery. I heard that almost all Quincy were master archers. Would you mind helping me out? Another asked. This went on with Yuzu kindly turning down some offers while Karen shared her brother's blunt disregard for formality. Unfortunately, the crowd did not shrink even a single person. How about you guys leave? The crowd heard a voice from behind. The twins smiled while the boys scoffed in an irritated manner. They already have plans with me. And who the hell are you? The turn to see a scowling Ichigo, cracking his knuckles as he glared at the group. Progress on Project 16. Dordoni soon stepped through the Garganta and into a large laboratory, where he was greeted by a woman with a braided ponytail and a kimono that reached her mid-thigh and had an obi that seemed unsurprised by his appearance. Welcome. I am Nimue Kuratsuchi. She greeted politely. Am I correct in assuming you were sent here by Ichigo Kurosaki? Yes Nina. The Privaron responded. Follow me. Nimue said as she guided Dordoni down the halls of the lab. One in particular causing him to flinch. Just kill me already. He heard someone yell out in pain. In a moment, almost done researching you. Dordoni heard another, more gleefully sadistic voice say. But, it seems like no two Arrancar are exactly alike. Maybe I'll need another test subject soon. Dordoni began to sweat. No worries. You're not going to Master Mayuri. You're going to Captain Urahara. His vivisections are painless. Nimue said, making the Privaron breath a sigh of relief. Until he remembered what a vivisection was. Tsukishima's loyalty. Progress was coming along back to its normal pace before Ichigo ended up wrecking most of the Seriidii. Urahara and Mayuri had the replica of Karakura finished and in place, the souls of the city hidden in stasis, and countermeasures ready in case something happened to switch the replica for the original. But there was one loose end that needed to be dealt with, one that could crush the entirety of Soul Society. You understand why you're here then? Soifon asked the Foolbringer, who was currently one of the most dangerous figures in Soul Society since he could now manipulate Ichigo's memories. I'm perfectly aware, Captain. Tsukishima responded. I'm in the unique position on having power over Ichigo Kurosaki, who is the key in the battle against Yawatch. I'm no fool, I'm not about to jeopardize the world for any stupid reason. I've had purpose, respect, and the chance to help. Not an ideal first meeting, but I've time to adjust. I'm ready to help in any way. Quelled destruction. With Aizen. Segunda etapa. Aizen mused, tapping a finger on the arm of his chair as he watched the battle between Ichigo and Grimmjow with his attack force. A second stage release for Arrancar. He turned his gaze to the fourth Espada standing off to the side of the throne room. I assume you knew about this since you trained him. Am I right? Ulquiorra turned to face his master and bowed his head. I attained that state when I fully embraced my aspect of death a long time ago. The Arrancar said as the two clashed. I abandoned everything about myself, or so I think, and became empty. A vessel to serve you, Lord Aizen. I kept quiet about it should I ever need an ace against my opponent. Or to completely crush their will to fight. He turned back to watch the fight between Ichigo and Grimmjow. Unfortunately, that no longer seems like an option. You should have shared this information sooner. Barragan grumbled as Stark and Lilinet entered the room. The stronger we are, the better our chances in the coming fights. It would have been useful, Harabel said, though if Ulquiorra is truly right about how to attain it, then it would make it nearly impossible to be allies. Or to even fight in some cases. She thought of her own aspect of sacrifice and Barragan's aspect of aging. Some seemed impossible to actually achieve or should be achieved simply for power. It makes little difference now. Aizen said, rising from his throne. Ulquiorra, you know what you must do. Everyone else, let us be off. When he finished, Tosin opened a Garganta with Karakura town as their destination. Ulquiorra watched as the battalion of 17, 14 Arrancar and 3 Soul Reapers, left through the dimensional portal and leaving him alone. He turned back to watch Ichigo, feeling an uncomfortable tightness in his chest. Ichigo. With the rest of the team. Uryu flexed his hand before rising from his where he laid, grunting in pain as his body screamed in protest for the action. He turned to see Chad and Tatsuki in the healing field with him as Candace flew them around the concentration of destruction that was Ichigo's fight. Just because the damage was being reversed did not mean they didn't ache. Orihime continued to heal while the Sternritters focused on proceeding toward the building where they felt the twins Ryatsu. How much longer before they're good to fight? Bazby asked, watching the healing in progress. I feel 3 more Espada in this place. And a whole lot of them disappearing, Bambietta remarked as they felt many Ryatsu disappearing. What the hell is happening? Please stop, I need to focus. Orihime all but shouted as she returned to her task. This requires emotional stability and focus. She thought she was getting better at this, but seeing her friends in such conditions served as a reminder that she's in a war and her friends aren't invincible. Kind of rattled her a bit, but her friends did regain consciousness and Uryu was the only one still healing. Heads up. Candace called out, directing their focus to a massive skeletal mangrove tree with an army of human skull-masked figures coming from its branches. What the hell is that thing? I am Rudborn Chelut. A voice called out, bringing their attention to the center of the top of the tree. In it was a man with a bull-shaped skull with branches wrapped around his body and a lightning bolt-shaped stick in his hand. Like Rinneganга protects the outside, I am tasked with protecting the inside. killing rebellious elements and intruders. He said as the army prepared to fight. Gantenbainne and Asauchi jumped off the platform and readied their weapons. Go on, we got this. The Afro-Aaroniero said, moving his mask over his eyes. I already betrayed Lord Aizen by joining you, might as well go all the way. Asauchi admitted, spinning her disc blade. I'd rather die fighting anyway. Any idea what his power is? Basby asked, refusing to sit out and deciding to stand by his allies. Any of them. I spawn an endless army. Rudborn said as another 10 figures came from his branches. Do they have souls? Candace asked as she and Bambi joined Basby. Orihime created a shielded platform with Santen Keshin while maintaining the healing process. Know why? The Quincy grinned as they manifested their spirit weapons. No reason. Basby said as the Quincy and Aaroniero then began walking toward the army. Orihime. Gantenbainne called out. That central pillar over there is where they have the girls you're here for. He pointed at the tower that they were heading towards. They'll likely have another Espada guarding them, so get ready for a fight. Asauchi said before swinging her weapon and smashing it into the crowd. You better keep your promise. She yelled before Orihime started flying them toward the tower. Ichigo vs. Grimmjow. The battle was fierce. Grimmjow was operating almost completely on instinct and its call of primal destruction with Ichigo defending against every strike. The panther slammed his claws into the hybrid, Ichigo blocking with his dual blades, and sending him flying into the air. The impact smashed Ichigo through buildings and pillars, creating shockwaves that sent the loose sand flying across the desert and turning the shifting grounds into a deep pit as a result. Descaron. The Espada roared as he unleashed a frenzy of swipes, each one creating a set of rapier blades that flew at Ichigo. Some dodged, some blocked, few that cut through his clothes and his skin. 10 blades pushed him back several meters before he broke them. And locked eyes with Grimmjow, just as the Espada bit into his lip. He gathered rapier in front of his mouth, forming a blue sphere of power before unleashing it in a mighty roar. The enhanced Zero crossed the distance in an instant, and in that same instant, Ichigo's body moved for him. The smaller Zangetsu blade was generating an aura similar to a seal Schneider that rose and cut through the Zero. When the blast ended, the cut-off rapier was absorbed into both Zangetsu blades, making them glow red and blue as Hollow and Quincy blades pulsated with power. Guess I won't reach the point where you don't need to watch my back. Ichigo thought, knowing that his Zanpakuto moved him on instinct, with the blades humming in response. I'm okay with that. He brought his Kyber blade to one of his cuts and gathered some blood onto it, charging it with power. At the same time he did that, Grimmjow appeared with another Gran Ray Zero at the ready. Gran Ray Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo said, swinging his blade as Grimmjow fired his blast. The resulting explosion cracked the walls of Las Noches, blew a massive hole in the domed roof, and shook Hueco Mundo for miles. With Ichigo's friends. Orihime flew them toward the palace at high speeds, panting from the mental exhaustion of maintaining her transport barrier and healing her friends. Uryu was now physically recovered, same with everyone else, but he still felt the aftereffects of his Volstandig. He doubted he could fight another Espada in that condition, but a part of him didn't feel too concerned. Chad seemed to get stronger and whatever Ichigo was doing seemed to be pacifying most of the hollows. They kept riding in silence, heading for the main tower, until they noticed something ahead of them. Of course, it can't be easy. Uryu groaned as most of the teens recognized Yami Largo. He was just standing in front of the building, tall and rigid as he waited for his opponents. When he recognized that they saw him, he grinned maliciously and began to charge toward them. Chad rose to his feet as Orihime kept them moving, planning to dodge the charging Aaroniero. Go on ahead, I'll take care of this. The Foolbringer said, jumping off the transport before anyone could say anything. The second his feet touched the ground, he activated his Fullbring and used Bringer Light to run past his friends and straight to the Espada. The two met midway and threw a punch at the other, Chad using La Muerte to match the sheer power of the giant Aaroniero, creating a shockwave of force and buying the rest of the teens enough time to fly past them and into the tower. "Pretty gutsy of you, human," Yami said with a cocky grin, "but I've been waiting for another crack at you." Chad looked up to the Arrancar and noted something off. "You seem bigger than last time," the Foolbringer said, trying to remember their last fight. "Yeah, I had to hold back when we last met. But now I've been given permission to go all out," he said, placing a hand on his Zanpakuto and releasing his Ryatsu. "On top of that, I've been eating and napping, conserving my power for this. Though you'll do as an appetizer for that hybrid BSTRD. I haven't forgotten how he humiliated me the first time we met." Chad's eyes widened as Yami continued to grow. "But you still PSS me off." In rage, Ira, he roared, pulling out his Zanpakuto and began to transform. He grew bigger and bigger, the jacket on his back flying off and revealing his 10 tattoo with a disintegrating one. "What the?" Chad gaped as Yami went from a really big humanoid to a gargantuan behemoth, 8 massive elephant-like legs with a giant tail with large club, and massive cylinders on his forearms and back. When he finished, Chad felt like an ant facing a mountain. "Let me properly introduce myself," Yami said, his voice echoing due to the distance. "I am Yami Largo, Espada number 0. The Espada raised his fist and brought it down. "Now de Ichigo vs Grimmjow." He laid there, panting in exhaustion, having used up the last of his rapier in an effort to best his opponent. The land around them was scorched black, burning hot from the aftermath of the blasts of energy while the space above them was still distorted. A figure stood above him, dark in his vision from blurry eyes and the figure's shadow. All of his power, all the effort to get stronger, and he still lost. A former version would be furious, but now he was calm. Almost happy about getting trounced so thoroughly. "Good enough for you, Grimmjow?" Ichigo asked, only breathing a little heavier as a result of their fight. The fallen panther started chuckling, growing into a barking laughter. "I really can't beat you, can I?" the Arrancar finally said, still laughing. "Can anyone really? What the hell are you?" He finally calmed down, pushing himself up to a seated position and coming face to face with Ichigo's outstretched hand. He took it, reverted back to his normal state, and knelt before his new king. "My hand is yours. You command, and I will obey. Is it going to be like this with every Arrancar I turn to my side?" Ichigo asked as Grimmjow rose to his feet. Then he sensed an incoming attack and sidestepped, dodging a bala that came down at him. Ichigo looked up to see a massive gash in the canopy of Hueco Mundo, with a familiar face staring down at him. "Ulquiorra," he said, some measure of regret coloring his tone. "You might have to kill him, Ichigo," the former Espada told his new leader. "Out of all the Arrancar, he's probably the most loyal to Aizen. Let's test that," Ichigo thought as he shot up towards the bat. With Uryu, Tatsuki, and Orihime, the trio ran through the halls of the palace, searching for the twins' Ryatsu, and ready to fight whichever Arrancar had them. They felt the fight between Ichigo and his opponent end with a climatic explosion while Chad seemed to get outmatched when Yami transformed. Even now, as they ran toward their destination, they were debating whether to run back and help their friend. That came to an end when 2 more female Arrancar barred their way. One was slender with black hair and pigtails and her mask covering her left eye, dressed in a sleeveless shirt that exposed her cleavage and stomach with a frilly skirt and thigh-high boots. The other was more tomboyish with blonde hair and her right eye covered by her mask, wearing a short-sleeved shirt and hakama pants. "This is the end of the road for you," the black-haired girl said, smirking menacingly at the trio. "Lord Aizen made it clear that he's keeping the girls," said the tomboy as both girls drew their blades. The 3 friends shared a quick glance, holding a silent conversation on how the fight would go, except Orihime walked ahead of them and stood before the Arrancar. "Go on ahead. I'll handle this," she said, pulling out Masamune. Tatsuki was about to protest, but Uryu held up his hand, pointing ahead. Tatsuki reluctantly nodded as the two disappeared on the other side of the Aaron car and continued running. "Hey!" The black-haired Aaron car yelled out before a barrier blocked her way. She turned to glare at Orihime, who was lowering her arm. "You beach!" She hissed as she got into a combat stance, holding her dagger at the ready. "Pretty gutsy to fight us 2-on-1. The blonde said, holding out her katana. "I'm Minoli Malia, Aaron car number 34 and she's number 33, Loli Avern." Minoli greeted as Orihime got into the stance that Unohana taught her. "Squad 15 6th seat, Orihime Inoue." The exorcist returned. "And it's not 2-on-1. She said as the 6 spirits of her Shun Shun Rika formed behind her, along with the androgynous forms of the 4 elemental spirits. "It's 12-on-2. With Ichigo." He was back in the eternal night of Hueco Mundo, standing on the top of the domed palace, standing across from him. His old friend, his current enemy, the last barrier between him and his sisters. He felt everything that was going on beneath him, but his friends trained to get strong and they could handle themselves. His teacher's words echoed in his mind, that a leader must have as much faith in his allies as they do him. They followed him because they believed he could conquer Hueco Mundo, and they separated because he believed they could survive. "Did you know that it would come down to this?" he asked, looking the shorter Aaronkar in the eye. "I did." Ulquiorra answered, unsheathing his blade. "I think, back when we first met, I knew you would become strong. Lord Aizen gave this task to me when I revealed our past." He pointed his blade at the hybrid. "To kill you, Ichigo Kurosaki. And you're just going to go along with it?" Ichigo asked, not showing any anger or grief. Just meeting Ulquiorra with a similar calm. "To kill an old friend? You're a soul reaper and I am a hollow Ichigo." He was saying before Ichigo cut him off. "Don't try that line with me, Ulquiorra. You follow a Shinigami's orders when you obey Aizen." The hybrid stated. "I've got Quincy and Hollow to me, something that should have been a death sentence in Soul Society, and they plan to make me the future leader of the Godai forces. I'm also not lying to the Aaronkar, I will kill Aizen and I will usher in a new era for them. Now, you can try your luck against me, Ulquiorra, but I think we both know how this will end." The two just stared at each other, waiting for the next move. "In close, Murcielago." The Espada said, gaining bat wings and a full helm. "Resurrección, segunda etapa." He finished, losing his coat while his arms and lower body was covered in a black fur, with his hollow hole looking like it was bleeding blackness. Ichigo's response was to unsheath both of his Zangetsu. "Bring it. World of the living." It was a normal sunny day in Karakura town. The town was peaceful and quiet, resting comfortably behind multiple barriers that kept it concealed in the furthest edges of Soul Society. In the world of the living was a perfect copy of the city, where every captain of the Godai stood ready with their most able fighters. The veteran warriors only reacted when the Gargantas appeared, signaling the arrival of Aizen and his army. For holes appeared to let out the army of 17, ready to do battle against the defense force of over twice their number "Is this it, Aizen?" Yamamoto asked, looking down on the upstart that began this war. "Is this all you bring to battle? Surely this is not what you planned." The smug look on Aizen's face was only marred with a measure of irritation. "True, this is not ideal for me," the king of Hueco Mundo admitted. "I'd much rather have several captains trapped in Hueco Mundo as well. But Ichigo Kurosaki has grown stronger than I had planned for." "Are you sure you can beat me without him?" he said as he, Jin, and Tosen unsheathed their Zanpakuto. "Almost everyone here is affected by my Shirkai, and I'm sure you know how strong I am. I give that boy 5 minutes at least before he shows up and kicks your butt, Aizen," Isshin said with a grin. "Then I'll just have to kill you in that time frame." Aizen said. His army charged forward. The winter war had begun. With Uryu and Tatsuki. The rest of the run was silent, cursing themselves for leaving their friends behind, raging at their current weaknesses, but they persevered. Focused on the task of recovering Ichigo's little sisters and the final traces of Aizen's army left in the castle. There was one Espada left that was ahead of them, curiously much weaker than before. They doubled their efforts and found an open door that had several bodies, similar to the soldiers of Rudborn Chelut. They got ready to fight and entered the room to find it filled with more bodies, covered in scorch marks, scratches, holes, and blood. The sole exception was a single door, guarded by an exhausted Neliel and her fraction. The Espada met the human's gaze. "I was told to take care of the girls," she told them, before falling down. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. "Where's Rukia?" Zamari dug the stumps of his arms in the desert sands, ignoring the screaming pain of sand and his body weight pressing into his cauterized wounds and leaving a trail of blood in his wake. He had to reach the medical center and find that medic, wondering why there was only ever one doctor in Hueco Mundo. To make matters worse, she was a favorite toy of Szayelaporro, and who knows what that psycho did to her. He felt elation when he finally saw someone heading toward him. It was the last feeling he knew before he was flash frozen, Rukia standing behind the now dead Arrancar. "Was I forgotten till the last minute?" she thought, feeling very annoyed with a certain author, who now felt the need for a new pair of pants. Once empty, now filled. Orihime vs. Loli and Minoli. Koten Zanshuan, Waltz. Orihime called out, splitting Tsubaki into 6 sprites that flew toward the 2 Arrancar. Understanding it was an attack, the 2 used Sonido to trap Orihime between them. Loli was in front and poised to stab Orihime while Minoli was behind and ready to behead the girl. Orihime dropped to the floor, pressing her hand against the stone. "Terra, now!" she shouted as the ground around her caved, causing the 2 Arrancar to tumble and fall. The 2 just barely escaped the trap and put some room between them and Orihime. "That beach!" Loli hissed, trying to think of a new strategy. "Our intelligence didn't say anything about her beyond having spirits on her side," Minoli said, wanting to talk some sense into her friend. "She's not just a normal human." Orihime stood back up and glared at her opponents, almost daring them to make a move. "Right. Should have done this from the start," Loli said as the 2 looked at each other and nodded. "Poison, Escalopendra. Sting, a scorpion." The girls yelled and transformed. Loli grew armor over most of her body while her arms became like centipedes, long and segmented, and something a tad more unsettling from the way they moved. Minoli developed a similar armor, but with a long scorpion tail and pincer-shaped punch daggers. The 2 insectoid Arrancar glared at the exorcist before making their strike. "Terra, wall!" she ordered quickly, the spirit raising the earth in front of her to create a barrier. "Ventus, let's get around them," she told the wind spirit as they used their speed technique to get behind Loli and Minoli. She paid rapt attention as the 2 Arrancar destroyed the stone wall. Loli's centipede arms seemed to be covered in a corrosive poison that ate away at whatever remained from her bashing the wall. Minoli was spraying her poison from the barb on her tail, but both made minimal progress from the spirit-reinforced rock. That's when Loli screamed out in frustration before unleashing her Zero. "Where are you?" Loli screamed out in frustration, scanning the debris to try and find her missing quarry. Minoli looked around behind them, just in time for Orihime to charge forward and attack. Minoli managed to evade, but her tail was almost completely severed. Her screams alerted Loli, who swung at Orihime. The girl had no time to dodge and feebly rose Masamune to block the attack, the segmented arm slamming against the edge of the blade. The exorcist braced for a pain that never came, and when she opened her eyes, she saw Loli looking in disbelief as her arms were now almost stumps of their former selves. That was close. Orihime heard someone saw as a more neatly dressed and tanned version of Muramasa stood in front of her, holding the Masamune blade. "You have gotten better, Lady Orihime, but you still have some growing to do. I guess I'm still too gentle to really fight." Orihime sighed looking at the spirit, while the Arrancar screamed in pain. "Let's finish this Masamune," she ordered, flicking her and glowing with spiritual power. The spirit nodded as he charged forward. "Aqua, bubble." Orihime commanded as the Arrancar got ready for a second assault. Before they could do anything, they were trapped in spheres of water. Helpless before Masamune as he cut off their limbs so quickly that neither realized they were hurt. Orihime stood before them as they glared at the exorcist, trying to kill her with their looks. The girl merely sighed. "Shuno, I am. Soten Kishun," she ordered as the two spirits turned into their healing sprites and enveloped the Arrancar just as Aqua's bubbles drained away. "You beach. When I get out of this I'll dash." Loli tried to threaten but was repelled when her head touched the barrier. "I really hate hurting people," Orihime said, sitting down in front of the two. "That's why I need my spirit friends to help me fight. Even then, I don't like killing," she said, trying to convey kindness. "What you're in will heal you, but my comrades are not so generous as to spare your lives." The healing process was moving very slowly, almost as if it wasn't happening at all while the pain finally registered to the Arrancar. "I insist you take Ichigo's offer. I'm not sure how long I can wait." A group of Exequia's Arrancar appeared behind Orihime and were quickly engulfed in a torrent of flames. "My friends are waiting for me after all," she said with a smile that sent shivers down the girl's spines. Ichigo versus Okiura. The air shook and ground trembled as the two did battle. The black and empty bat against the hybrid protector, former friends and now enemies, fighting for their own reasons. Okiura, as per his orders, and Ichigo, as per his nature to recover and protect his sisters. Those that could keep up with the two could see the pair flashing about in the sky over Las Noches, matching swing for swing and blow for blow. To those that knew the fighters, something felt off about the fight. "Come on Ichigo," Okiura thought as he swung his tail like a whip, only for Ichigo to duck underneath and into his guard, making him catch Ichigo's blades in his talons and kicking off the hybrid's chest. "You have to kill me. We both know this." He dashed toward Ichigo, who jumped over his head and threw him down, sending Okiura to the dome of Las Noches while his tail smacked Ichigo in the face, which sent the hybrid flying into one of the castle's towers. The Espada rose to his feet while Ichigo had to pry himself out of the rubble of the collapsing building. "I know my duty, you know yours. So why are you hesitating?" He brought his hands together and pulled them apart, creating a long lance of glowing green rapier that burned with energy. "Lanza del Relampago," he said before aiming and throwing the burning lance at Ichigo. "Don't be stubborn Okiura," Ichigo shouted, shrouding himself in rapier before catching the lance in his own claws as he was now covered in his hollow armor. "I'm giving you a choice. Live or die, me or Aizen." He growled as the lance burned in his hands, slowly converting and taking control of the attack. "Why are you so loyal to Aizen anyway? He only uses people, he doesn't care about the Arrancar," he shouted as Okiura appeared before Ichigo again, with another energy lance in hand, giving Ichigo almost no time to block as the lance pierced through his armor and deep into the hybrid's chest. He made it clear he was different from other Soul Reapers. Okiura said, wrapping his tail around Ichigo's neck. "You joined them. You are the one being used, you told me that yourself that you were training solely to kill someone." He knew he could lay a killing blow on Ichigo, snap his neck, blow a hole through his chest, but he hesitated and Ichigo punched him away. As the Arrancar reoriented himself, he saw Ichigo take the lance in his chest and finished what he was doing with the previous spear. He watched as Ichigo took the unstable energies and solidified them into actual spears, almost as if he perfected the technique. He held up one and threw it to Okiura, strong enough to reach him but not enough to hurt him. The bat caught it and charged at Ichigo, who mirrored the action, going from fighting with claws and swords to spears. "And when you stop being useful, he'll toss you aside." Ichigo returned, dodging a move from Okiura while sweeping at his legs and making the Arrancar fly off. I am training to kill someone Ulquiorra, someone stronger than Aizen, but not because I want to. Because I have to. If I can't kill the man I'm training to kill, then everyone is doomed. Souls, humans, hollows, all of them. Ulquiorra pointed at Ichigo and shot a pitch-black Zero at Ichigo, who moved his spear forward and fired his own Zero from the spear tip. I'm fighting to protect everyone I can. You stood by my side once before, why are you so intent on killing me now? He shouted as the blasts collided and exploded, destroying the dome of Las Noches. Because you chose to go where I couldn't follow. Chad versus Yami. The Foolbringer was on the defensive because nothing he did had any affect. Yami shrugged off all of his punches and overpowered him in every contest of strength. The main and only reason Chad didn't become a bloodstain on the desert sands yet is because he was too fast for Yami. With continuous use of Bringer Light, he was able to outspeed and outmaneuver the giant Espada. Not helping the Arrancar was his own rage, making him predictable. Chad dodged around Yami's oncoming fist to land on his elongated back, where the Arrancar's tail was coming down to crush him, and only managed to slam into his own spine. Gah! Yami yelled, feeling the aftershocks of his own attacks. Chad landed at the small of Yami's back, gasping for breath. Looks like the only thing that can really hurt him is himself. Sato thought, trying to think of any plan, any way for him to beat the Espada. His thoughts were interrupted when Yami's hand came out of nowhere and grabbed him. The Foolbringer struggled against Giant's crushing grip, but he was at Yami's mercy. His stomach lurched as the fist that held him shifted and brought him to the front before tossing him in the air and catching him again, this time right side up so Yami could look him in the eye. You've been really annoying, flashing around like that. The Espada said, glaring at his prey as it struggled against him. But I gotta admit, you've got guts trying to challenge me like that. Chad continued to squirm and struggle, slowly getting his arms freed. As a token to your bravery, you can choose how you die. He managed to pry one hand out of the death grip and was working on the second. But, I'm also a little curious. Most trash run off when they face me or simply die. Why did you stick around? What makes you think you can fight me? He asked as Chad freed both of his arms. El Directo. He shouted, shooting his blasts into both of Yami's eyes. Proving that they were still vulnerable, the Zero Espada dropped the Foolbringer to grasp his eyes in pain. Taking his chance, Chad jumped back to get some distance. The same instant Yami removed his hands, still squinting from the damage. I'll be honest, I don't think I can beat you. Yami wanted to crush the arrogant bug instantly, but he couldn't deny his curiosity in what Chad had to say. Something that he could use to push the trash to despair when he crushes the life out of it in front of him. It's obvious you're stronger than me, tougher than me, the only reason I'm still alive is because I'm faster than you. But it's not that I can't fight you, it's that I can't back down. So what? Yami asked, his vision getting clearer by the second. You keep fighting because of some sense of honor? I made a promise to my friend. He explained as his medallion began to glow. That I would always have his back. The only way to stop him is to kill him, and I'd be there to keep that from happening. The sand began to shift away from Sato as his spirit seemed to change. You want to kill my friend, stand in his way, threaten everything he loves. I won't let you. Even if it kills me, I have to beat you. Here and now. He looked up to Yami as his Ryatsu exploded into a pillar of light. I still have no idea what this is, but now's as good a time as any. I'll tell Kisuke about it later. He thought as the energy seemed to turn into a liquid and take shape before turning solid. It had 4 arms, 2 Gigante, and 2 Diablo, had a mix of all the colors of his arms decorating its form, and had a pair of curved horns on its head. It matched Yami in size and Chad saw through its eyes as well as his own. Diablo Gigante. With Uryu and Tatsuki. There was only silence as the group let the Espada rest while they removed all the bodies, and only after the teens confirmed the state of the twins did any tension ease. Yuzu and Karen were resting soundly in what seemed to be an induced sleep while the Espada guarded them, Uryu thanking his father again for including everything necessary to be a doctor in his education. With the bodies out of the way, Tatsuki went inside to wake up the girls while Uryu got ready to speak with the Arrancar, getting a Sprenger trap ready to blow them up if necessary. Uryu took the chance to look over the trio. The green-haired girl that still slept was clearly the Espada of the group, but the other two were off. Their faces were completely obscured by their masks and they didn't wear the usual white every other Arrancar had, in fact they were closer to hollows than Arrancar. The one with the beetle mask had white armor on his chest, arms, and shins with most of his body being purple and a loincloth giving him any modesty. The one with the tiki mask was wearing a yellow bodysuit covered with black polka dots. It took every ounce of self-control Uryu had not to go into tailoring mode as he finished his observations. Thanks for not immediately attacking us. The beetle, Pesh, said to Uryu. Lady Nell took the majority of the assassins and she's still not in full fighting shape. Some fraction we are. The Tiki, Dondo Chaka, continued. We couldn't protect her back when she was the third Espada, and we still couldn't protect her now. Sounds like there's some history of distrust among the Arrancar. Uryu noted as the two continued. Lady Nell, all three of us really, we aren't fighters. Pesh said, taking over the conversation. Lady Neliel hated fighting, only doing so for what? She deemed a good reason, unlike another Espada by the name of Noritra. Uryu nodded, recognizing the name of the Arrancar Chad and Tatsuki fought. One day Noritra conspired with another Arrancar to betray Lady Nell, using Dondo Chaka and I as bait. They tore off our masks and ambushed Lady Nell. Such a dirty trick, don't you know? Dondo Chaka wailed, somehow producing tears. And we were abandoned in the deserts of Hueco Mundo. The beetle continued. For some reason, Lady Neliel was turned into a child and we thought it best to let her live in peace since she hated fighting anyway. But then Aizen reclaimed her, saying he had a new need for her, and restored her as the sixth Espada. Lady Nell was loyal because Aizen was bringing order to the lawless world of hollows. Dondo Chaka took over. And she took over watching over the girls because Aizen swore their safety. That ended when the exequias appeared and said their orders were to deliver them to Szayelaporro for experimentation. The Espada said as she rose from her slumber, her fraction helping her up. I heard your companion, Ichigo, I think, was trying to recruit the Arrancar to his side. Is this true? Uryu nodded. It is. There is a greater threat than Aizen coming and Soul Society has decided to make allies with the Arrancar. Ichigo Kurosaki is to take the throne of Las Noches, since he is the closest thing to a hollow among the court guard squads. Will he be a just king? Neliel asked, narrowing her eyes at Uryu and trying to divulge the truth from him in any way. Don't worry Nelly. They heard as Yuzu and Karen appeared with Tatsuki, back in their attire before being kidnapped. Ichi and I will be a great king. Yuzu kept cheering. Though he may want to punish you for being the one to hold us captive. Karen said with an obvious emphasis on the word punish. The result was a blushing Uryu and Tatsuki while Nell enthusiastically cheered. I'm in. Ichigo vs Ulquiorra. The fighting continued, wrecking the walls of Las Noches and sending devastating blasts across the desert sands, and still at a stalemate. Ulquiorra unable to land a killing blow and Ichigo still trying to reach through to his old friend. The Arrancar slashed with his spear, cutting off Ichigo's arm while the hybrid countered by punching the bat in the stomach during his regeneration. Ichigo grabbed Ulquiorra's neck in a crushing grip and the bat ripped him off with a hard strike from his tail. Why are you holding back? Ulquiorra wondered, knowing that Ichigo was not going all out. He did not use any Kido, actual Hakuda moves, Quincy arts, just countering the Espada with his own prowess as a hollow. I made my vow and you must kill me to reclaim your sisters. I'm not your ally. He growled mentally, slowly losing himself to his more violent emotions which Ichigo was not prepared for. Ulquiorra's strikes became faster, more erratic, less predictable, and more vicious. He knocked Ichigo's spear out of his hands and used the blade to slash up Ichigo's chest to ribbons before using his tail to throw Ichigo down onto the desert sands. As the hybrid flew toward the ground, Aaroniero charged a zero to the tip of his spear and shot it down to Ichigo the second he collided with the sand. The blast slammed into the hybrid and caused a massive explosion, Aaroniero panting from the effort and growling when the smoke faded. Ichigo still lived, and he was looking at the bat with pity. Aaroniero. He called out, prompting the espada flash in front of Ichigo and attack again. This time, Ichigo did not dodge. He just stood there and weathered the attack. Stop trying to change fate, Ichigo. Aaroniero growled, slashing and pummeling the hybrid. This is the way of things. Soul Reapers kill Hollows, Hollows kill Soul Reapers. He roared as his hands broke with every strike on his enemy. I can't believe in this world you say you'll create. I only trust what I see. He roared as Ichigo gave him a harsh shove, making the empty bat glare at him. Then kill me. Ichigo ordered, holding his hands out and displaying every vulnerability he could. If it is fate, kill me. Aarionero's hand tightened around his spear and let out a mighty roar, throwing the lance at the hybrid, and dropping to his knees as the missile missed its mark. Ichigo said nothing as he walked toward Aaroniero, who reached up to his face as he felt an unfamiliar wetness. Am I crying? Why does my chest ache? He thought as Ichigo stood before him. Ichigo, what is the heart? He asked, begged for an answer. I don't think I can really answer that. Ichigo responded, looking down on the espada. Everyone has a different idea. I think it's the force that drives a person to complete their goals, to feel for others, to achieve what a person never thought was possible. Ichigo held out his hand to Aaroniero. It's what pushes me to defy your so-called fate and save you. Aaroniero looked at Ichigo's hand and saw the small child that he once protected years ago. I see now. I was always waiting for you to return. He thought as he reached out to the offered hand. My destiny is to serve, but I found a false king. He freed my mouth and ears, but you gave me a voice and heard me long before anyone else. Aizen made me acceptable, but you accepted me before anyone. I am yours to command. My king. He said, looking up to see Ichigo smiling down at him. The same smile he wore when they first met. And his heart sank as a hand erupted from Ichigo's chest. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Karen's Bad Influence. Karen. Tell Big Brother Uryu where you learned to talk like that. The Quincy cried out, holding the tomboy by the shoulders while Tatsuki began to throttle Nell while blaming her for the naughty language. Pesh and Dondochaka freaking out about what to do. I heard it from Dad. She said, making the teens freeze. He said it felt good to be punished by Mom. I thought it'd help. Uryu and Tatsuki decided not to mention this to Ichigo so they could kill Isshin when all was said and done. Rukia's off-screen adventures. The icy wizard stood across from the Aaron-car, the right half of her face covered by a human skull-like mask and wearing a green turtleneck dress, neither moving to avoid antagonizing the other. The Aaron-car had a dead, broken, gaze that told a deep story of pain and suffering. Rukia felt no danger coming from the Aaron-car and decided to initiate the dialogue. Who are you? She asked. What are you among the Aaron-car? The Hollow raised her head, almost as if she was confused. I am Roka Paramiya, the healer among the Aaron-car in Lord Aizen's service. She answered, quietly. Almost as if talking scared her. Are you not here to kill me, Shinigami? No, only if you try to fight. Rukia returned, before realizing they weren't anywhere close to fighting each other. Aizen's regime is ending. Join us and you will be spared. The lieutenant offered. Okay. Roka immediately agreed, throwing Rukia through a loop. That fast? I am but a tool. It makes no difference who I serve. Okay, this girl needs therapy. Rukia thought, surprised that things went this easy. And I swear, if I don't get any screen time next chapter, I will kill the author.